Good afternoon. Welcome to the East Gwillimbury's Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, April the 18th, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time and ask if there's any declarations. Seeing none, I will move along our agenda. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams First Nation and Indigenous peoples, and on behalf of Council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nations as East Gwillimbury's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. Before we proceed with the community announcements, I've been advised through the municipal clerk that there has been a request to put the CPRC 2023-07 report regarding the East Gwillimbury Soccer Club lease from today's agenda. General Manager Karmazin, can you please provide some further information regarding this request?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The EG Soccer Club has requested a further review of the terms of reference for potential lease presented in this report, and as a result, staff are requesting that the report be withdrawn from the agenda at this time and referred back to staff for follow-up with the club and a report back at a later date.
Thank you very much. I do have some community announcements. And the first one is it is National Volunteer Appreciation Week. We had a wonderful celebration last evening with our East Gwillimbury volunteers. We cannot thank them enough for the time and the effort they continue to dedicate to our community. Earth Day is celebrated on April 23rd, and a few environmental cleanup events are being planned for this coming week. If you can't attend, please consider doing a cleanup in your own neighborhood. I'm quite sure that most members of council will be out there doing it as well. I'll move along to presentations, and we do have a presentation from B. Titherington, Director of Transportation and Infrastructure Planning, and J. Kazilis, Manager, Transportation Development Planning, York Region, making a presentation to committee regarding Sutton Hill Trail and Zephyr Rail Trail. Welcome. Good to have you with us today.
Good afternoon. So good afternoon to East Gwillimbury Council and Madam Mayor. I'm here on behalf with my colleague John Kazilis and the region to provide an update on a project we're quite excited about, which is the acquisition of the Zephyr Rail Trail. We've got about a 7-minute presentation, and then we're happy to answer any questions following. So I'll turn over to my colleague John.
Thank you, Brian, and good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of Council. Happy to be here today to provide an update on the Sutton Hill Trail and Zephyr Rail Trail land acquisition from Infrastructure Ontario. The trail runs from Catering Road in the north in the town of Georgina to the regional forest, Zephyr Forest Tract at Holborn Road in the town of East Gwillimbury, and it spans approximately 13 kilometers. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to take you through the 2022 Transportation Master Plan as it relates to our active transportation network out to 2051. The trail purchase from Infrastructure Ontario, talk a little bit about the rehabilitation needs, and then we'll go into some next steps. Next slide, please. So these are two maps that came from our 2022 Transportation Master Plan, and they really represent the active transportation network out to the year 2051. The map on the left is the regional road cycling network, and I know it's hard to see from here, but there are green lines, solid green lines, and they represent the active transportation on-road network that exists today. And the dashed pink lines are what we're working to build out to the year 2051. The map on the right is a new map as part of the 2022 Transportation Master Plan, and it really represents the regional trail network. So that's trails that go outside of the region's right-of-way, but are just as important to creating our active transportation network. You can see in the top right, I put a black box around the Zephyr Rail Trail. And it's important to note that providing for active transportation along roads and trails is a key component of the future transportation network. When we did our consultations for the 2022 Transportation Master Plan, we heard loud and clear that residents wanted more and safer active transportation infrastructure. Next slide, please. So in 2019, Infrastructure Ontario reached out to the municipalities to offer the corridor for sale. York Region, the town of East Gwillimbury, and the town of Georgina all raised their hands to purchase the property, as it was a once-in-a-generation opportunity to acquire the trail. Infrastructure Ontario had identified that they wanted to work with one municipality on the sale of the property, so York Region took the lead on acquiring the property. The sale was finalized in March of this year for a cost of approximately $360,000, with York Region paying the cost. We're continuing to work very collaboratively with both the town of Georgina and the town of East Gwillimbury on the roles and responsibilities around day-to-day operations and maintenance, as well as the longer-term asset management needs for the trail. I would say that at this point in time, the preferred approach is that the region continue to undertake the rehabilitation needs for the trail, with the towns of Georgina and East Gwillimbury helping out with the day-to-day operations. And that really this is to make effective use of existing processes and practices in place, as well as optimize financial investment from the municipalities. Next slide, please. So we took a joint site walk with staff from the town of Georgina, East Gwillimbury, as well as York Region in March of this year to take some photos and really better understand the trail quality at this point in time, and to make sure that we were doing any immediate improvements to it. You can see from the images that you see on the screen, rehabilitation of the trail is needed in order to ensure safety for all users, and this includes debris clearing, road and trail crossing upgrades, surface improvements, and signage upgrades. Next slide, please. There are two existing bridges on the trail located in the town of Georgina, and there is one missing bridge located in the town of East Gwillimbury along the trail, and they are denoted by the stars located on the map. You can see from the images, the one in the northern section is an old rail bridge. It's got timber piles or timber poles holding up the rail deck. Our initial assessment before we purchased the property was that this bridge would require some rehabilitation in the order of $1 million to $1.5 million. And this is, more work needs to be done to better understand the state of those piles. But of course, we will try to salvage as much of the bridge as possible for various reasons, financial as well as heritage value. The second bridge is the one that's in the middle, and it's the one of best quality. I had some work done to it in the recent years, and I will share more information on that in the next slide. And the last bridge is a discontinuous bridge, and I'll also share some more information on that in the next slide as well. Next slide, please. So if you can click just once on this slide, there should be a video that comes up. And this is an existing structure just south of Baldwin Road. This was drone footage that we took from our joint site walk. You can see it's a little choppy, but underneath the bridge, there's the yellow steel structure. It is in very good shape. We feel like we can salvage that. There are other improvements that need to be made to the rail deck, which there's nails sticking out. There's wood that's missing in some sections. So we'll be working to upgrade that quickly. The next video is of the structure located between Holborn Road and Ravenshoe Road. And this is where the structure is missing. Infrastructure Ontario at one point in time had removed out an existing structure. It was dilapidated, and they did not want to replace it at that point in time, so they removed it. In the wet seasons, you can see it floods out in this area, and it's non-traversable by pedestrians and cyclists and other mobility needs. And so we'll be needing to put in a new structure at this location. Next slide, please. So I'll just wrap up with some next steps. We'll finalize the roles and responsibilities around the day-to-day maintenance and the longer-term rehabilitation needs with the towns, and this might be documented through formal maintenance agreements with the two towns. We'll develop a joint communications plan on the status of the trail to make sure that the public and members of council, respective councils, are kept up to date on the progress that's being made. and we'll identify future project scope and phasing plan for construction works. As you can imagine, there's varying degrees of amount of work that needs to be done, from the trail surface to signalized intersections potentially along some of the regional roads, as well as the bridge improvements that need to be done, and they'll be planned or phased over the next 3 to 5 and beyond years, pending the scope of what we find from our investigation. And so with that, next slide, please. Just like to thank you again, Madam Mayor, members of council, for taking this presentation today from myself and Brian Titherington. We're happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very, very exciting for East Gwillimbury and for Georgina. Thank you. Questions from members of council? Councillor Roy-DiClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to our guests, thank you very much for taking the lead on this. I was a member of I was the council liaison to our Trails Committee many years ago when we heard about the possibility that this section of trail might be available. And I think this is such an incredible investment in our trail network. And I know that we're also looking at on the west side at the Lake to Lake Trail. But I think when all is said and done, this will actually create that loop. You come up one side across the shores of Lake Simcoe and down the other. And I think that this is such an incredible opportunity for our municipality and for Georgina and for the region as a whole, and quite frankly as the province as we build that trail infrastructure and those networks. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And I would be happy to support pretty much anything that you were asking of us this afternoon. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That's the sign of a good presentation. Councillor Crone, I believe you had your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we've got Councillor Roy-DiClemente in a generous mood today, so we should jump on this opportunity. Through you, Madam Mayor, to our presenter, thank you very much for this. I know there's a number of people in my ward that are going to be very excited about this. So this is tremendous news. I'm really happy, and that bridge that will link up the two parts of the trail, that's going to be phenomenal. So thank you so much for doing all that. Just curious, the money that went into this, was it primarily through the tax levy, or was it through development charges, or a combination of the two? How did we fund this? Just curious.
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor. So the initial purchase of the trail came from our growth program, our pedestrian cycling program, through our capital budget, which is funded. The funding sources are 90% development charges and 10% tax levy, which is in line with all of our growth infrastructure. Any type of rehabilitation needs that would be required beyond that would come from our asset management reserves, which are predominantly paid for out of the tax levy. We do need to understand a little bit more about the type of work that's being done, particularly on the structures, in particular the new structure, to understand what the split is. There could be an opportunity there to have maybe a 10 or 20% development charge component to that, but that's still to be determined at this point.
That's great. Phenomenal. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor. All for me.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I'm not seeing any at this time. Thank you so much for coming, both of you. It's wonderful to have you in our council chamber. Thank you very much. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy-DiClemente. I just need a mover. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon. You've made ours. I have no deputations at this time under item F. However, item G is Development Services. Councillor Roy-DiClemente in the chair. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a few items on our agenda this afternoon, and the first one is a presentation on the YSpace Northern Entrepreneurship Hub. And I'll just call for a motion to receive the presentation we're about to have, moved by Councillor Foster. Ms. Bégin, would you like to kick things off?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it's my pleasure to introduce Brittany Stevenson Byers, who will introduce you to our external guests here today. Just to give you a little bit of context and background, this is an initiative, one of the good things to come out of the pandemic. My fellow economic development colleagues across the region were meeting at one point on an almost weekly basis, and through those conversations discovered that Georgina had identified some potential funding sources. We followed up and had many, many conversations about how we might work collaboratively to support entrepreneurship development in our communities. We reached out looking for partners. York University stepped up and has been a partner throughout this process, and the result has been, although it's flown a little under the radar just because of various funding announcements and stuff, it's been a very robust program in providing business skills development and support to emerging entrepreneurs. That we've now launched branding that, so there's East Gwillimbury specific YSpace, there's a Georgina YSpace, and then collaboratively we're the Northern Entrepreneurship Hub working together. So I'll let Brittany, our newly minted Economic Development Officer, her position has recently been reprofiled, introduce our external guests. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council. My name is Brittany Stevenson Byers. I'm the Economic Development Officer here at the town. Joining with us today is Stephanie Simpson, the Entrepreneurship Coordinator from the town of Georgina, who you'll hear from later on in the presentation, as well as a guest speaker, Sylvie from Creation Farms. Stella is a local business mentor who was supposed to be here with us today, but unfortunately was unable to attend, so I will relay the notes that she's left with us. And together we will provide the comprehensive update on the Northern Entrepreneurship Hub, and including updates on the partnership, programming, businesses, and mentors. Next slide, please. So Margot did provide a little bit of background on the partnership and how that partnership has evolved and where it's originated over the last 3 years. At the beginning of COVID, the economic development officers at in the Northern Six met on an almost weekly basis to discuss the COVID impacts had on our businesses, the changes and as well as the changes of regulations, and we were able to meet to support these businesses at a time of uncertainty. The EDOs would share resources and work together on outreach initiatives, including the business outreach. Through these meetings, we learned that the town of Georgina was seeking funding to support businesses and the recovery efforts, and that opened the door for collaboration. The municipality sought the opportunity to bring in a third partner, York University. York University at that time had been leading entrepreneurship programming through the YSpace York Innovation Initiative and operating a physical incubator space in Markham since 2018. Together, we were successful in receiving funding from the Rural Economic Development Fund through OMAFRA, and this officially launched our partnership and the first phase of programming. Next slide, please. So the Business Bounce Back program was the first phase of the programming, which focused on businesses in the hospitality and tourism industries, which we understand make a large composition of businesses in both Georgina and East Gwillimbury. Business Bounce Back was designed to help businesses pivot and find new revenue streams during the closures. This program was delivered online through YSpace's Entrepreneurship Hub and ran 3 cohorts over the span of 12 months, providing education to 70 businesses. The program's success and feedback established the foundation for additional entrepreneurial programs and supports, which launched us into phase 2, the Northern Entrepreneurship Hub. So this phase launched in 2022, where the town of EG, Georgina, and York University continued their partnership to deliver a 2-year business incubator and accelerator pilot project to support the business growth and recovery phase of the pandemic. I would also like to emphasize that this project does align with the updated strategic plan. The partnership between these 3 organizations was founded on the shared goals of providing university-led entrepreneurship programming to support businesses in the recovery phase of the pandemic, which aligns with quality programs and services. supporting the growth and development of businesses, so in turn creates jobs and encourages participation in our community, which aligns with responsible growth. And lastly, creating opportunities for businesses to access an ecosystem of resources and one-on-one support without having to leave their community, which aligns with building complete communities. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the YSpace Northern Entrepreneurship Hub is a continuation of the Business Bounce Back program. This included an implementation of a physical business incubator and accelerator space to offer networking, collaboration, one-on-one support, and to deliver in-person programming. The programming is continuously refined and augmented to address the needs of the businesses. These programs are delivered online through Zoom, in person, or asynchronous online. This is a pilot project that is being funded for 2 years through the Town of East Gwillimbury, Town of Georgina, and York University. We also received a second grant from the Rural Economic Development Fund from OMAFRA to continue the programming. Because of these contributions from each of our partners, we are able to deliver these programs at no cost to our businesses. Next slide, please. So I won't touch on all of these, but since the launch of the program, we have taken on many opportunities to engage with the businesses in the community. I won't go through each one, but I will highlight that ahead of each of our programs, we have been boots on the ground in the cores of Holland Landing, Sharon, Queensville, and Mount Albert to conduct business drop-in business visitations. Typically, these are quick touch points that allows us to introduce ourselves, learn about the businesses, what their needs are, and engage them into the program. These visitations we also like to use as a follow-up so that we can reach out, thank them for their time, and again, follow up on their needs and how we can get them enrolled into the program. We have also been a vendor at many town and chamber events, including the EG Community Open House, Farmers Market, Christmas Market. We've been at Farm to Fork, Summerfest, and the Chamber's networking breakfasts. Having a presence at these events not only allows us to connect with the community about the program, but again, we make time to speak to each of the vendors that are there on site. Typically, these events will also have a higher number of home-based businesses, which we don't always have a pulse on. So again, that's a way for us to learn about who these home-based industries are and how we can support them. Other impactful efforts include the announcement of the program at the Collision Conference in June of last year, and of course, the grand opening of the YSpace Georgina, which was in August of 2022. So a big thank you to Madam Mayor and Council for your support and attendance at these events. Next slide, please. So at this point in the programming, in the presentation, I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie Simpson, who will touch on the programming. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of Council. I'm Stephanie Simpson, the Business Entrepreneurship Coordinator for this partnered YSpace program. For our programming, we have a physical incubator accelerator space located in Sutton and Georgina. It's an open concept co-working space where participants can come in, utilize the tools, work together in an inspired and supported space where they can meet as a group or walk in for a consultation. Additionally, we've been utilizing the lower floor of the Heritage House located next door as our satellite location. This has allowed local business owners and entrepreneurs to meet within their own municipalities. For example, we've had participants walk over to the Heritage House for sessions, which was really cool for us to see. Like they said, I had a great walk here with my backpack, and having that level of support in your community is really important. So we've hosted virtual workshops, in-person application sessions, and in-person peer-to-peer networking style groups. Our peer-to-peers have been facilitated by Tech Connects, one of the many partnership collaborations we've made. We've also connected with Digital Main Street, who's facilitated 5 of our digital skills for business workshops. Having this connection has allowed our participants learn about their offerings in marketing and digital skills, as well as what grants that they can utilize for their websites. We've also partnered with Change Connect, who's provided one-on-one mentored support. Mentorship and consulting for a small business is costly and can be hard for a new or existing business to expense. Being able to offer this to participants of the program of no cost helps to make these resources more accessible to everyone. Next slide, please. So another program we have is idea consultations. So far we've completed 43 consultations, one more since these slides were submitted. This is an ongoing program that offers participants the chance to meet with our team in a one-on-one consultation. The participant shares the story of where they're at in their business, any struggles or obstacles they're currently facing, and it allows us to share resources and supports with them. This is an introduction to share how the entrepreneurship ecosystem can help an idea come to life. This program is designed to help connect participants to various partners and support organizations within their local community, as well as York University's network. This is an ongoing consultation experience where they can do check-ins as follow-up consultations when they feel like they're ready for next steps. Next slide, please. So the next program we had was Business Foundations. So this ran throughout the summer. Last summer, we supported 205 participants. This was a free of charge live over Zoom educational workshop series that covered topics such as building a business plan, marketing, social media 101, setting up business operations, and more. Additionally, individuals who attended at least 7 of the 9 workshops received an Innovation York Certificate of Completion, illustrating their dedication to learning about the essentials of launching a successful business. This program is designed to provide entrepreneurs with what they need to start or refine an existing business, and it's a great way for us to connect them with local experts and resources that are available. In our workshops, we had an average of 30 to 40 participants and 59 in our most attended workshop. What we learned from Business Foundations as well as idea consultations is we have a large amount of home-based businesses and new business owners. The foundational programming was very well received and seemed to really suit the needs of these participants. This led to the next program called Business Plan Bootcamp, which kicked off mid-October. So next slide, please. Business Plan Bootcamp, we had 14 participants enroll in this intensive program. We actually received 48 applications. We selected 14 applicants, and this was just to suit the needs of the program, so they were within EG as well as Georgina, and they demonstrated that they were ready for the time commitment of this program. The Business Plan Bootcamp was 8 weeks long. It was free of charge, and it was an educational entrepreneurship series that helped aspiring and existing business owners build and develop their business plan. Participants learned from their weekly on-demand workshops, met with mentors, and networked with other business owners. This allowed them to move forward with their goals in business plan creation with the support of a mentor. They had 8 weeks of mentorship, one-on-one, an hour each week. We also hosted office hours in our in-person peer-to-peer groups, and they were able to share their successes, challenges, next steps with other entrepreneurs within their community. They were able to make founder-to-founder partnerships and grow connections within this group. So what we really learned from this program was the power of mentored support and how it can propel the success of an entrepreneur. We also heard from feedback that the struggle of running a business and keeping up with the digital skills required today can feel incredibly crippling to a business owner. This led to the creation of the Digital Skill Program. Next slide, please. Okay, so digital skills for business. So we've supported 479 participants in this program so far. We're currently in the week of our 14th session, so we just have this week and next week remaining. This program is all about closing the digital gap for business owners. Digital Skills for Business is an educational workshop series that focuses on building the online presence of a business online. This series covered topics like social media, digital marketing, e-commerce, and using tools like Facebook Meta, Google Ads, and Google Analytics. This program was created with our learnings and feedback from the YSpace, East Gwillimbury, and Georgina programs. We added additional in-person Ask Me Anything style workshops. We offered virtual educational workshops, peer-to-peer networking groups, and clinical application sessions at the East Gwillimbury Operation Centers, where participants could apply their new skills in a supported space with a local expert. 5 of the 15 workshops were facilitated with our partner Digital Main Street, who specializes in delivering small business development programs that support businesses with their digital skills and technology across Ontario. This allowed for a direct connection to digital resources and grants provided by Digital Main Street. Next slide, please, and thank you. I'll now pass it over to Brittany to continue.
Thank you, Stephanie. Throughout these programs, we've onboarded 9 East Gwillimbury business mentors to facilitate the programming online and in person. We do have an ongoing application open on the Advantage EG website looking for local mentors for future programming. Why do we use local mentors? These local mentors can understand the composition of our community. They're already existing within the community. They understand other businesses and networks that are available. They can provide support and the accountability for the businesses to stay focused on their goals. Next slide, please. So since June, we have learned a lot about our businesses, along with their stories and why they do what they do, and of course, what their needs are. As of March 30th, there have been a total of 479 participants enrolled into the program, with 53 of those coming from East Gwillimbury and 117 coming from Georgina. Having York University as a partner means that we are also leveraging their mailing list and their contacts, so that's where we're seeing other participants coming in from outside of these municipalities. In terms of the industries, the 4 most common are retail trade, professional services, health and social assistance, and hospitality. Understanding what types of businesses are enrolled is important to us because we can mindfully tailor the programming to those specific niches, identify the market trends, and provide targeted mentorship and co-working groups. And then lastly, what are their needs? We're learning that businesses need one-on-one support and mentorship. They need financial support. They need education to grow their business, and they need that connection to community. This connection to community can range from connecting to their customers, connecting to other businesses or organizations that can help support their business. This information, again, is important to us because we can tailor the education to the specific challenges and opportunities, customize the support, and give them information to expand, and gives us information to expand our local entrepreneurial ecosystem to help connect participants to community partners. Next slide, please. So Stephanie and I, we literally live, speak, and do dream about this program. I'm ashamed to admit that one, but, and you know, the program wouldn't exist and operate the way it does without our local mentors and our local businesses being involved. And what really resonates with us are the stories that we hear from each and one of the participants. We were supposed to have Stella Graphics with here today. Unfortunately, she was unable to make it and sends her deepest regrets, but she has left me with her speaking notes, and I would like to relay those on her behalf. Dear Madam Mayor and members of Council, I am honored to be sharing my thoughts and experience as a local mentor of the YSpace Northern Entrepreneurship Hub and appreciate the opportunity to do so. I have been living in East Gwillimbury for almost 3 years, and I'm the owner of Stella Graphics, a thriving digital design and marketing studio in Holland Landing. I also volunteer on the Economic Development Advisory Committee, Communications Subcommittee, a subcommittee of EDAC, Broadband Working Group, and the Tourism Committee. As someone who has always been passionate and invested in the betterment of my community, it is with great pleasure that I have embraced this mentorship position to help other local businesses, as well as the town's forward-thinking initiatives to grow and strengthen our amazing community of entrepreneurs. With over 2 decades of teaching and mentoring experience, I was approached by YSpace for the 3rd year to facilitate 3 workshops this spring. Those workshops were setting up social media accounts for business, an in-person workshop at the EG Operations Center on March 24th. This was a sold-out event. Marketing strategies, a virtual presentation on April 4th, and an upcoming in-person workshop at the East Gwillimbury Operations Center to teach content creation on April 21st. Again, another sold-out event. These topics are an important foundation for any business and are vital to the business community. With each session, I aim to provide essential knowledge and skills to organizations that seek to improve their marketing strategies. These workshops offer a comprehensive understanding of the fundamentals of marketing, including marketing analysis, customer segmentation, positioning, branding, and advertising. By attending these workshops, businesses can learn how to create effective marketing plans that can help them attract and retain customers, increase their market share, and achieve their revenue goals. Additionally, these workshops provide opportunities for professionals to network and exchange ideas, fostering innovation and creativity in the industry, a valuable investment for businesses seeking to improve their marketing performance and gain a competitive edge on their respective markets. My goal with every session is to provide attendees with a sustainable way to take steps to reach their business goals. The feedback I've heard has been wonderfully positive, with attendees leaving feeling informed, but most importantly, inspired. It has been wonderful meeting with these entrepreneurs in person after having worked with some of them one-on-one virtually during COVID, including the wonderful Sylvie from Creation Farms, who's here with us today. I'm excited for our upcoming in-person workshop in content creation this Friday at the EG Operations Center, as it should be the most interesting one yet, full of great tips and information that attendees can start applying right in the session. I look forward to continuing to partner with YSpace, East Gwillimbury, Georgina to foster growth in our communities through our amazing local businesses. Thank you for the time, and thank you to YSpace for thinking of Stella Graphics and trusting me with this incredible initiative. So at this point, I would like to hand it over to our next guest speaker, Sylvie from Creation Farms.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council, staff, and residents. My name is Sylvie, and I'm co-owner at our family's all-natural regenerative farm called Creation Farms here in East Gwillimbury. We do what we do because of passion, providing our no-spray produce with a growing 35-item product line, including our all-natural soaps, herbal teas, fresh-cut flowers, gourmet spices, artisan chocolates, and seasonal hand-painted ornaments. We attend a local farmers market every Saturday from May to October, and we're happy to be able to give back to our community, partnering with a local food pantry. I want to thank Brittany and Stephanie for their tireless work organizing and arranging programming, and for council in having me here this afternoon. I was accepted into the Business Bounce Back program in 2021 and the Business Plan Bootcamp program in 2022, and I'd love to share with you how these programs were a benefit not only to our small business, but our community and beyond. We had monthly check-ins with fellow business owners in our cohort, which was critical in opening up the conversation surrounding shared wins, challenges, and areas of improvement. It normalized common hurdles and gave us a space to collaborate on business solutions. In addition to meeting with fellow local business owners, meeting with Britt and Steph in monthly check-ins as part of their mentorship has been a blessing, as it's been a support system during the pandemic until today. We were initially able to meet at a local library with my kids, which was so accommodating, and I really appreciated their willingness to meet with me in my situation. During the pandemic, a lot of things were virtual, and because I didn't have a laptop, the YSpace program graciously provided me with one to use during mentorship meetings and online workshops so that I could be in a quiet room while my kids learned nearby. The type of mentorships that have been available to me have been both virtual and in person, through the Business Bounce Back program, the Business Foundation program, and beyond. I was paired with several experts in their field. I was teamed up with 7 experienced mentors, including the talented Stella from Stella Graphics as one of them, offering their wealth of knowledge and consulting services. I've also been connected with the project team at YSpace Markham through Britt and Steph. It feels incredible to have access to these workshops, networking opportunities, and industry-leading mentorships through York University. It elevates conversation, ideas, thinking, processing, and collaborating. Working with a marketing expert was so eye-opening, as she shared with me and encouraged me to look into the breaking into the agro-tourism industry and generating an email management system, things we had never considered. With the help of a mentor, together we curated 2 business plans for different offerings of Creation Farms. Working with an SEO expert, I was able to set up a Google My Business account, improve our Google search results, and resolve website indexing issues. Working with a financial mentor was so helpful and insightful, as we were able to directly see profit margins on our product line and factoring in cost of labor and materials. I have attended a lot of educational workshops led by the Town of East Gwillimbury, Town of Georgina, and York University. They've offered both virtual and in-person workshops that have been invaluable to our business, its vision, where we want to go, and how to get there. Workshops offered like SEO optimization, social media, and marketing 101 has given us insight into areas we had previously overlooked and hadn't considered. It was through these classes and mentorships that people suggested for us to check out Digital Main Street, which is where we built a website for our business. We would have never been able to afford an e-commerce website for our business, but now we're able to offer our products not only to our customers in York Region, but we're able to ship Canada-wide. Having the website helps cultivate community, build trust, and having an online presence, convey timely educational information through our online blog, and people get to know who we are as a company, and that helps increase brand awareness. We plan in the next 3 to 5 years to continue cultivating more partnerships, diversifying our offerings, and improving our barn. Currently, we're saving up for infrastructure and exploring loans and grants available to improve our barn to be able to host educational workshops and farm tours in the coming years. Because my husband is a talented high school science teacher, he is able to use his skills and knowledge and conduct these educational workshops in the future. We initially thought to build a farm storefront at Woodbine from scratch, but after a meeting that Britt thoughtfully arranged with the planning department at the town offices here, it helped create awareness of all the steps involved in creating and building a storefront, instead using our existing structure for that purpose. I'd love to continue utilizing these resources and supports as we expand and draw an expansive community passionate about sustainable agriculture here in East Gwillimbury. Being connected to people willing to help you in your journey is such an asset, not only as a small business owner, but as a resident in this local, growing and vibrant East Gwillimbury community. Through this program, its mentorship and workshops, I've been able to envision the future of Creation Farms through strategic, analyzed, and focused consideration. I'm so grateful to Britt and Steph for connecting me to all these wonderful people, networks, programs, and events. I would have never known about or had the resources to fund this vast array of helpful programs. Being a small business owner, resources are limited, but finding impactful programming available to entrepreneurs like me through the Town of EG, Georgina, and York University, we together were able to change the trajectory and course of our business for the better, and that's something that I'll be so grateful for and cherish. It has been an absolute highlight to be part of this pilot project, and I would highly recommend this program and its extraordinary leadership to any business owner looking to evaluating, collaborating, expanding, or scaling their small business to the next level. I have left our business cards with Britt if you're interested to learn more about Creation Farms or to contact us. Thank you to the Town of East Gwillimbury for your support in co-funding this such a wonderful and impactful program and investing in the future. By supporting this program, it will yield a return on itself, drawing in more community, tourism, jobs, while strengthening our local economy. Thank you.
So a big thank you to Stella and, for her experience in volunteering her time to the town in the YSpace program, and of course Sylvie for her strong-willed commitment to grow her business through YSpace. Next slide, please. So what's next for us? In terms of programming, look out for Business Foundations to launch this summer. We do have idea consultations open on an ongoing basis throughout the remainder of the program that goes until 2024. The Town of East Gwillimbury, Georgina, and York University have submitted a joint application to the Rural Economic Development Fund to support the continuation of the program through till 2026. One of the key deliverables under this application is to provide in-house mentorship at no cost. We will continue to provide opportunities for in-person support, co-working space, and delivering program in person in East Gwillimbury and of course Georgina. And we're also looking for vendor opportunities this summer where we can connect to businesses in person. Next slide, please. So that wraps up our presentation, and thank you for your patience. I know it was a little long, but there was a lot of ground to cover. And then, of course, on behalf of Stephanie, Stella, and Sylvia and myself, thank you. And we'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor, for any questions and feedback.
Wow. I think we all feel that way. I'm seeing glances across the table here. Thank you, Brittany, Stephanie, and Sylvie, for such an impactful and powerful presentation. I feel like it was long overdue, and I wish we had known sooner about the wonderful work that the two of you were driving and leading, and the impact that you have been having on our business community. So with that, any questions or comments from members of committee? Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Brittany and the team, and thank you very much to Sylvie. I've had the benefit of enjoying your vegetables at the farmers market, and so it's exciting to see your business grow with the support of the town of EG and their partners. My question is, and also very successful in terms of the numbers with the digital skills for business, 479 participants, that's very impressive. So my question is with regard to eligibility. So if there are people listening now in the community, what are the parameters for eligibility? And when people such as, and businesses such as Sylvie's with Creation Farms have completed all of the programming that you have, is there a formal certification that they receive, some sort of acknowledgement in terms of their business? Thank you.
So through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Leahy. So the eligibility requirements are for the businesses to be at least of 18 years of age or older to enroll. Their first touch point in enrollment is through the IDEA consultation. We do offer this program to the through the municipalities of Georgina and East Gwillimbury. So our goal is to capture the businesses that are located in each of those communities. We are open to businesses that are located with the Chippewas of Georgina and do work collaboratively with them to enroll businesses from the Chippewas into the program itself. And then we do open the applications depending on, for example, when we did the business plan boot camp, that program was specifically targeted for Georgina and East Gwillimbury businesses, whereas Business Foundations, Digital Skills Business, that one was a little bit more open targeted. So we do see businesses coming from outside of the municipalities coming in and enrolling, and we definitely take that as a compliment, especially, we're really proud of the programming that we're running. Having YSpace and an incubator space this far north is huge. So to have folks coming in from outside of the municipalities is we see that as a huge compliment. And sorry, can you remind me of the last question you had? Sorry.
Through you, Madam Chair. And when someone has successfully completed all of the components of your programs, do they receive a certificate or some formal recognition?
Yes, so when we ran Business Foundations, there was a certificate of completion. So for those who participated in 7 of the 9 sessions, they received an Innovation of York certificate of completion showing their dedication to the program. For digital skills, if you complete 12 of the 15, at the end you have the opportunity to apply for mentorship. So that was another way to attract folks into the program, get them dedicated and committed to 12 of the 15 sessions, and then again have that extra extension of support. As far as I'm aware, the one program that we've ran has only had the certificate of completion, but again, further programming will also include those types of incentives or certifications.
Thank you, Brittany. Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add on to some of the statements said earlier. Very excited about this. I've always been a supporter of business incubators and any assistance we can give to fledgling entrepreneurs. I was actually at the grand opening for this space not quite a year ago, so I'm really supportive. It's nice to see Sylvie here, a great ambassador for the program, and we've spoken on on the phone or by email. So it's nice to see Sylvie out. And the one question I just ask is, do you ever think you could see the day where we might have a similar space in East Gwillimbury? Because I would love to have something closer to home. Maybe that's not fair, but I'll ask it anyways. It's more aspirational.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Crone, I'll pass that one over to General Manager Margot Bision. Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you. Through Madam Chair, yes, I think we were cautious when we started collaborating on this program, not wanting to bite off more than we can chew, not necessarily wanting to commit to a facility, but we've been very intentional in utilizing the Doan House space and making sure that it remains animated and active. And so, looking to continue to leverage facilities that, like the EOC has been great as well. So we're recognizing as the programs proceed the value in having a physical space that people can walk to and to be sort of a clearinghouse for information and support, ideally in collaboration with other business serving organizations like the Chamber. So definitely is something that we envision for the horizon for sure.
And it's a great place to have it co-located, yes. Thank you, Margot. Is that all, Councillor Crone? Okay, anyone else? Okay, well, seeing no other comments, we had a motion earlier from Councillor Foster to receive this presentation, and I'm just going to call a vote. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you again. This was quite an afternoon for us. I really
Thank you so
appreciate it.
much. Yes,
Please
our
come back and let
pleasure.
us know how you made out on that grant for the extension of the program.
Yes,
Thank you.
more to come. Thank you again.
Wonderful. Okay, hard to kind of focus back on our agenda, actually, after that. So the next item on our agenda is Planning Report DS 2023-12 regarding a request to rename a portion of Ben Sinclair Avenue. Ms. Bégin?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, in essence, we received a request to consider changing a portion of Ben Sinclair Avenue to Court. Staff reviewed the request and identified that while it would not technically be incorrect to change that portion to Court, it's also not incorrect for it to remain as Avenue. Changing it would have certain resource implications. It would trigger changing an adjacent street as well, and that obviously has implications for the residents and already established addresses. So doing an overall cost-benefit analysis, the recommendation came from staff not to proceed with the name change, and Manager of Planning, Victoria Moore, is also here if anyone has any further questions on that.
Members of committee, any questions? Councillor Carruthers.
Oh, there we
It's
go.
on now.
There we go. Now we're on. Okay. I was wondering if requests like this from residents could be delegated to staff, because this seems like it was pretty straightforward and an easy answer, not a lot of discussion from council up here. I'm wondering if there's a way to have future requests like this delegated to staff, because I can see if everything has to come to council on renaming streets, it could end up bogging down the work of council as well as staff time.
Ms. Bégin?
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly we can come back with some recommendations. I think there's an opportunity to sort of do a comprehensive look at requests that we get to change numbers, for example, and ensuring that we have, that is also a resource-intensive process, so ensuring that we have an appropriate structure in place to be able to accommodate that, or if it doesn't make sense, refuse it at the staff level so that we're not wasting the applicant's time either.
I appreciate that, and there's so many things that we need to discuss, and so clearing the agenda to have more time for things that will make a bigger difference is really important. Certainly, if there was anything that was controversial, we'd want to see it coming to council, and it's also a good opportunity to use the ward councillors to discuss with them, and they can let you know whether it needs to come to all of council, or if they're fine with staff making the decision, then I think that's a good way to delegate.
Thank you. I believe there was correspondence. If it didn't come to all members of council, it certainly came to the ward councillors, and I believe there was and I could be wrong, but I believe there was a request from the mayor's office for this to be considered. So this could be part of the reason why it ended up here, was that there was some traction with it, and staff will certainly take that into consideration for next time. In the meantime, Councillor Carruthers, would you be willing to make the motion as presented? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Seeing no other comments or questions, may I have a vote? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is an application and notice of intent to demolish a structure on a property under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act at 6 King Street. Ms. Bégin, do you have anything to add to this?
Through you, Madam Chair, nothing to add. I mean, it's evident from the images that are included in the report that the damage that was sustained during a storm event. And I would note that this is a request that we're seeking same-day ratification due to the potential dangers imposed by the structure in its current condition.
Okay. Can I have a motion for that? Councillor Foster, any discussion? Councillor Leahy.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, and I can attest to that as a person who passes by on a daily basis, and the proximity to the sidewalk, literally a big wind coming along, and what that crossed my mind when I see it every day is that any person or any animal, anyone in the vicinity could be injured, or there could be further damage. So I agree with the recommendation by staff to immediately address the situation. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Leahy. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. I've mentioned this before. We need to have a better process. So as Councillor Leahy has said, that there's a significant safety risk while this works its way through the process. The last one we saw, we had a resident who was stuck in a cold, moldy, damp building, unable to make the renovations that he needed to keep himself safe and warm while this went through the process. In my almost 5 years on council, we've only ever taken things off of the list. I'm not sure that we are accomplishing what we want with our heritage list, which is preserving heritage. Instead, it's a lengthy, staff, resource-intensive process. It's not great for our residents, and we need to find a better way to be dealing with our heritage. And so my question to staff is, are there plans to bring something back to council to change this process? Because I can't sit by and just watch us, month after month, taking things off the list and putting the safety of our residents on hold while we're looking at these things. So is there plans to bring this back, or do you need a recommendation from council to relook at what we're doing with heritage?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think we would request council direction to seek opportunities to have some of this, the removals request staff delegated. That would certainly be able to would speed the process if that's indeed possible. And we'd have to look at the applicable legislation as well to make sure that I think we still. One of the considerations is that we still rely on the Heritage Advisory Committee's expertise and input without having comparable expertise on staff. So, anything outside of that there would be resource implications, whether it's peer reviewed by an expert or whatever. But so we can certainly look at some of the options. But if we can consider staff delegation, that would certainly remove a lot of the time lag.
Okay, and then through you, Madam Chair, if I could make the motion that staff bring back a report on the handling of heritage removal requests.
Can we
Yes.
can we deal with this item first?
Absolutely.
And then we can consider your motion as
Perfect.
far as process. Just with respect to this property, Ms. Bégin, we're not actually removing this property from the list. We're simply allowing for an accessory structure that's on the property to be removed. So the other challenge, I think, with this is the properties that we have on the list take out the entire piece of land, not just the house or not just the barn. So I think that's part of the complication here is we're not removing this from the list. We're simply addressing a shed that's basically fallen down on a property that we're keeping on the list, correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's correct. So it's, that is one of the challenges, is that to have a property listed, it garners protection, but it also means that you have to have this more extensive review process to be able to do
Okay.
anything.
So I believe we had did we have a motion for this, Madam Clerk? Okay, so Councillor Foster, you've made this motion as presented. Any further questions on this particular issue? Okay, all those in favor? And that motion is carried. Councillor Crothers, you wanted to put forward a motion that staff bring back a report, and then I interrupted you.
Okay, so the clerk's given me some wording. Be it resolved that council requests that staff report back on the handling of heritage removal requests, an opportunity to have requests delegated to staff subject to compliance with the Ontario Heritage Act. And I will
Okay.
make that motion.
Ms. Béger?
If I may, just a point of clarification, removal requests and demolitions are two different things, so we may want to include something relative to demolition.
Perhaps we
Happy.
could just reword it to be heritage
Requests.
register workflows.
Yeah. The intent is to find out if there is a better way for us to protect our heritage, because all we seem to do is be taking things off the list or approving demolition, and I would just like to see something more proactive where we're actually, preserving heritage. So, looking at ways to make this better. We did have a report from a consultant, so perhaps we can dust that off and see if there's anything in there that we could be doing, because this current configuration of council hasn't seen that.
And you'd like to see it a little bit more efficient, I think is really what it comes down to. Mr. Valchich?
Madam Chair, yeah, just following up on Councillor Crothers' point, the previous consultant's report, and staff can certainly dust that off and just see what relevant information is there that we could bring back. Just keep in mind that originally the idea was to streamline the list much more aggressively at that point in time. And I think council chose instead to say, let's leave some of these on and have a further look at them as they come up. And so part of the reason we're looking at these kind of one at a time is because I think council was a little uncomfortable at the time with a little bit more of a large-scale streamlining of that list. But maybe there's a different appetite at this point in time, and we could certainly, bring that back in some appropriate form for your reconsideration.
Thank you, Mr. Valchich. Just out of curiosity, just a second, Councillor Foster, do we have a sense, this might be a tough question, do we have a sense of when this request to demolish came in? Sorry, Ms. Moore.
Through you, Madam Chair, this came in about a week and a half before, or a week and a half ago. I think it was the day before the council report deadline, so we expedited it to get it on the next agenda.
Okay, so from that perspective, staff have worked very quickly to try and address this. So we're being efficient from that perspective. Councillor Foster, you had a comment. Thank you, Ms. Moore.
I think just to go, thank you. I think just to go along with the topic we're dealing with right now, I think everybody in the room has to realize that the consultant's report at the time was done largely from the roadside. I'm a little bit reluctant to take a sizable amount of buildings out of our heritage list that were looked at from the roadside. And that was part of the reason that the Heritage Advisory Committee took a better look at that list and decided that, for instance, there's places on Woodbine where the road or the house is a quarter of a mile off the road, and you're looking on the side of the road saying, I think this needs to come off. I'm a little reluctant to do that. So maybe we should explore the possibility of I hate to come up with topics for workshops, Madam Mayor, because we seem to have those all the time, but maybe it's about time that we had a little bit of a workshop on heritage so that everybody could better understand the processes on how this works. I'm sure there are buildings on that list that need to come off, but quite frankly, we don't know they need to come off until the request is made. So it's kind of one of those things that we have to go through.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Hackson and then Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, and I will follow up with Councillor Foster, noting that This is a demolition of an accessory structure, so there still is another building on that property that has to be maintained in the meantime. Thank you.
Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. And I agree with Councillor Foster. This would be a great workshop topic because I think we really need to dig into what we're doing with this. And I just wanted to be clear, staff were very efficient with dealing with this. My concern is that it's always subject to when council meets, and a good thing this didn't happen in the summertime when we don't meet as often. So thank you for staff for processing this very quickly.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you put the resolution back up on the screen for me, please? I'm just going to read it out for those who are watching remotely and so on. So, moved by Councillor Crothers, be it resolved that Council requests that staff report back on the handling of Heritage Register workflows and opportunities to have requests delegated to staff subject to compliance with the Ontario Heritage Act. Discussion. Councillor Foster.
Thank you. Should the Heritage Advisory Committee be included in that resolution? I'm sure staff is going to reach out, but should it say that in there?
Would we, Councillor Crothers, this is your motion. Would you like to include a reference to the Heritage Advisory Committee? So maybe have requests delegated to staff and/or the Heritage Advisory Committee? Would that be appropriate?
And consultation with the Heritage Advisory Committee would be fine. I think it's
Okay.
implied, but I'm happy if you want it actually spelled out in there, that's not a problem.
Okay.
So through Madam Chair, that has been added to the last portion of the motion.
Okay. We've got it added to the motion. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? And that motion is carried. Opposed? Any? No, I did not see any opposition. Okay. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the prepared agenda. Ms. Bégin, do you have anything further to add under this area?
Nothing further at this time. Thank you, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. I did have one item, and that was, I just wanted to, I know that at least myself and I believe even Councillor Carruthers as well, that members of council have been getting requests about bag signs popping up like whack-a-mole games, and our poor bylaw officers are struggling to kind of keep up with that. I know we had some discussion about having to amend the sign bylaw in order to pursue those people who are in violation of the sign bylaw. Are we getting close to having something to come to council for our consideration?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we do have a draft updated bylaw ready. It's really a function of just agenda management and being able to find the time to discuss it, but we can bring
Okay.
it forward as soon as
Thank
there's
you.
an opportunity.
Thank you. I think our staff would appreciate some relief if we can get those changes made. Thank you. Any other comments or questions under Development Services? Seeing none, I'll turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're at item H, Corporate Services, with Councillor Carruthers in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have 2 items for committee today. Both of them are good news. I'll turn it over to CEO, Acting CEO Valchik to take us through the first item regarding climate emergency declaration.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just make a couple of introductory comments, and then I'm going to turn it over to our Environmental Initiatives Coordinator, Chris Ross, who will be joined by a couple of guest speakers as well to assist her. Just a little bit of background first, though. This is not a new issue for discussion by this council. There was discussion of, in fact, our Environmental Advisory Committee was looking to see council consider a climate emergency declaration back a year or two ago, but given that we were in the midst of the pandemic, there was a sense that that should really be sort of deferred until we emerged from our state of local emergency. And so we've now had an opportunity to do that, and Ms. Ross has I think, a very good and comprehensive presentation for you today. We also have a draft climate emergency declaration. Although it's here for receipt, from staff's perspective, we've put a lot of thought, and Ms. Ross has, in my mind, done a great job looking at sort of other comparable situations and put together a draft declaration for your consideration. And although it indicates it's just for receipt, we would certainly be supportive of committee determining if they thought it was appropriate to recommend that through to council for approval. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Ross, who's got a very comprehensive and excellent presentation for you today.
Thank you very much. Madam Mayor, members of council, I just want to start this saying that when a house is on fire, everybody goes out to help, right? It doesn't matter if it's my neighbor, it doesn't matter if it's myself, my mother, or it doesn't matter even if it's a person that I don't like. The human instincts just kick in, and we go out and help and do whatever we can to stop that fire. And it is hard for me to separate the concerned, worried human being from the unbiased professional that I need to be today and right now. But the climate topic is something that has been very close to me for the last more than 20 years now. And so this is me trying to give you all the information possible in 10 minutes. I'm going to try. As I said in the morning, I can easily take a week talking about this and even more. So according to the United Nations, climate change is the rising in temperatures due to the human-driven increase in carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. As simple as that. There is this short video that I will really encourage everybody to go back and watch. I'm just going to jump into this section to showcase what this video is telling us is how I remember when I was in high school, I was told that we should never reach 353 ppms or part per millions of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. And I remember myself telling, oh, we are not that dumb. And sadly, as you can see in this graphic, we were very efficient in not only reaching that point, but going even over and over that. And what this graphic is telling us also is that even though Earth has been in many cycles of warming up and cooling down, what we've done is releasing in a very short time, in less than a century, the carbon dioxide that should have been released during thousands of years. We are at the end of the last glaciation, and even though you see that in the graphic, the carbon has been up and down, the temperature on Earth is closely related with that, and we have been very efficient, as I said before, releasing carbon. I want to also say about, many people say that we only release 2% of the carbon in the atmosphere compared with other countries. We are part of those top 10 countries, Canada. And if we see at the dioxide equivalent per capita, we are in the first place. And I just want you to imagine that every single country and every single human being in the world think that their footprint is not that big. We are doomed to catastrophe. So here we see also, I want you to know that all this information that I am showing you today is science-based, and the presentation has the links to everything that is shown here. So please go back to this presentation at your own time and dig deeper. I guess not everybody likes horror movies, but there is also opportunity with climate change. So let's not just be gloom and doom. Let's see the opportunities. I remember, you can see in this graphic that the north is the one warming up faster than everywhere else. And the anomaly, the temperature anomaly is plus minus 4 degrees. And the problem is that when people want to deny climate change or say that that is might not happen and is not that bad, if we see the average temperature, yes, the change is not that bad, the change is not that big, and a couple of degrees won't harm Canada, right? A warmer winter is going to be well received. Well, that is not true. And that is not true because the number of extreme hot days are going up. The number of heat waves are going up. The length of the heat season is going up. And the average length of heat waves is only going up. And what we're talking about is something that is not happening only in Canada. There is piling information. And again, please, I'm not going to stop in every single one of these because, as I said, I can take hours or even a week to talk about this topic. But what I want to know you to know is that there is a lot of information. And every single image here has a link to where the news is coming from. So it's also happening in Canada, and there are stories all over, and it's not that far. We have histories like the 10 top in this slide, the 10 top impacts or events that happened last year. And then we have also around the world, in North America, what is happening in Canada. And I just wanted to showcase, like, there is a lot of information about climate change and this. And also the political timeline. The United Nations started to talk about climate change and the impacts to limit climate change in 1992. And since there, we've signed the Kyoto Protocol. Canada went in and then went out. Then we had the Paris Agreement. Then we have the IPCC, or the International Panel of Climate Change, urging the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions before 2020. And last year, the United Nations Conference of the Paris 27 said that we need to limit climate change to 1.5. And also the importance of biodiversity limiting climate change. And we also have a lot of evidence, scientific evidence, telling us why do we need to listen to the IPCC. And in one single phrase, I would say, we need to do this because it's not one person talking about this, it's thousands and thousands of scientists devoting their lives to study this and to show us the information that we need to see to understand that this is our house on fire. And we are not talking just about the loss of biodiversity, not about that. We are not talking about losing infrastructure. We are not talking about summer that are warmer or winters that are shorter. We are talking about losses of life that is already happening in Canada. And you might remember the heat dome in 2021 in British Columbia, or what happened last year in Nova Scotia. Again, you have the links for every single news here. But again, the information that is here is piling, is kind of frightening. And every increment in global warming are noticeable and is going to impact Canada twice as fast as in the rest of the world. And is going to impact the North 3 times even faster. So here in this graphic, in number 5, in your right side, you will see that what is the red line is showing us what the implemented policies, what is the path that we are on right now. And in order to limit warming to 1.5 degrees, we need to take the blue line, which means that we need stronger and bold actions, urgent actions right now. And what is a climate change emergency declaration? A climate emergency declaration is an action taken by governments and scientists to acknowledge that humanity is in a climate emergency and to commit into taking action, urgent action, and serious and ambitious actions to mitigate climate change and to adapt to its impacts. The first declaration of climate change happened in 2016, and today the amount of population covered by these declarations are more than 1 billion citizens in the world. More than 40 countries, and just in York region, there are 3 municipalities that have declared climate emergency. Why a climate emergency is important in EG? Because municipalities influence even half of greenhouse gases emissions, and because by Those who have declared have established a goal to reducing greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050. I have to say that 80% by 2050 is not enough. We need to be ambitious in this and say we need to reach net zero by 2050. However, whatever step in the right direction is a positive step. Over 650 jurisdictions in Canada have declared a climate emergency, and in York Region, Vaughan, Keene, Aurora, and Newmarket have declared such emergency. It is also important because the official plan is aware of the challenges of climate change and is calling for a climate adaptation and action. And also because EG has reduced emissions and contributed to climate change mitigation, but as I said in a previous presentation, doing a lot is not enough, because doing enough is being perfect, and nobody is perfect, and we need to do a lot more. So also, because EG could take advantage of climate change and recognize that climate action represents an opportunity for economic growth, EG can develop strategies to address environmental stewardship and climate change mitigation. So what can EG include in the declaration? Well, background information. I don't know if you had the opportunity to read the declaration, but we have a lot of areas there that are telling us why this is important and why this is urgent. We acknowledge the climate emergency, and we express our commitment to do something about it. And we call for specific actions. In the draft declaration, you can see that basically what we are calling EG to do is to define a climate action plan, which will define what kind of actions can we do as a corporation and with the community to mitigate climate change. And the community energy plan is also giving us the opportunity to reduce our emissions and to, again, work with the community in order to reduce our footprint and the emissions of greenhouse gases. What are the opportunities with climate change? Well, we have the opportunity of innovation, clean energy, energy efficiency, promoting small businesses, and the previous presentation was a great example of that. The local economy contributes to climate change mitigation and adaptation, and the diversification. So solutions, I took these words from David Suzuki that were said this year in February. Solutions to climate change crisis exist, but we need the will to change. And resolving the climate crisis is a challenge, but not for the lack of solutions. We need political will and public support. And we have 95% of the technologies right now that we need to solve the problem. Why wouldn't we employ all available solutions when failing to do so will lead to catastrophe? And I want to finish my intervention saying that I am 41 years old today yet, and I have a 21 years old daughter. And I've been really scared of the world that she will inherit when she's my age. And I don't want that for her. So I want to do something today so she doesn't have to worry tomorrow. And I'm going to invite my co-presenter. She is from the Clean Air Partnership, and she's going to talk about municipalities and climate emergency declarations. So, please.
Thank you. Can I do it on that?
Yes.
Thanks so much. Good afternoon. Oh,
Chris, you.
So how do we, there?
that's okay.
Okay. I guess it's this one. There, okay?
Yeah. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of the Council. I'm Desiswava, Outreach Manager at Clean Air Partnership. Clean Air Partnership is a registered charity that serves as the Secretariat for the Clean Air Council, and East Gwillimbury is part of the Clean Air Council, which is Canada's largest peer-to-peer municipal climate action network, representing over 39 municipalities in Ontario. So we wanted to acknowledge that East Gwillimbury was, in the past, a climate leader as the first municipality to develop and implement green development standards. Thankfully, now there are 9 municipalities, part of the Clean Air Council, who have a green development standards with a whole new set of metrics that are required for developers. And there are a few more municipalities that are going to use these metrics and requirements to update or launch their new green development standards this year, including City of Markham from York region. We also wanted to state that we are very glad to work with you and to support East Gwillimbury in your climate actions. So climate emergency declaration is a first step that usually leads to the creation and implementation of climate action plan. And if East Gwillimbury want to use federal money for a creation of a plan or feasibility study or pilot project, this is the path. And currently there are available funding through the NRCan Code Acceleration Fund and Federation of Canadian Municipalities and Green Municipal Fund. So what is a climate action plan? Climate action plan can be a resilient and mitigation or either, and it can be corporate or community plan or all of that. Each climate action plan has the following sections defining greenhouse gas targets. Just for reference, 24 out of the 39 CAC members have committed to net zero by 2050, following the federal commitments. For actions, these are just 2 examples because it makes sense to start from building and transportation sectors as they're the greater greenhouse gas emitters. It also makes sense to start from corporate emissions because they're easier to identify and track, and the municipality has a control over those emissions. Municipalities are moving towards greening their fleet, taking sustainability practices such as right-sizing and telematics and fleet electrification. And the last critical piece of every climate action plan is the accountability, which is identifying who is responsible for implementing the plan and tracking progress, as well as what is the budget for implementation and the public progress report. There are a lot of tools that are available out there to support the climate action plan, and as a CAC member, you have our support as well. These are just some examples of climate action that are currently implemented by Ontario municipalities. The most common and efficient one is conserving energy through the use of LED lights and the building automation systems, switching to heat pumps because they significantly reduce energy consumption, and combined with renewable energy production, this is the way to save money on energy. Another critical task that municipalities are currently working on is incorporating climate change into municipal decision making and integrating climate change into existing and new plans. And we can help you in this because we have a resource hub and a guide. I'm talking about the Climate Implications Repository and the Aligning Consultation Guide, which provides step-by-step and examples of how to incorporate climate change into all municipal plans. Another resource is the Climate Action Atlas, which compiles ambitious mitigation projects, and municipalities are using this atlas to showcase their climate progress to the community, thus enhancing accountability. And I wanted to conclude with a statement that we started with, that CAC is here to help you. And as you can see, we helped our municipalities in achieving these actions. There's a very good peer connection with expertise on each of these topics that can support you to advance. And again, CAC is here to help you in every step as well. Thank you. And now, give it back to you.
Thank you. I just want to conclude that EG has done a lot in the right direction, and we cannot say that we are starting from zero, and we are not saying that the climate emergency declaration will change the way we are doing in a different or in an opposite direction. It's just reinforcing what EG has as a core value, which is environmental care and environmental stewardship. So I am open for any question, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Leahy, go ahead.
Thank you very much for you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation. It was very thorough. It was very timely as well. I had a resident just yesterday ask me, oh, the town's declaring a climate emergency. What does that mean for her? What can she do? What can her family do? And so I'm wondering about the timeline of the climate action plan that you're putting together for the town, but also as well if it will incorporate what individual residents can do to take action, and when that will be communicated to the residents of East Gwillimbury.
The idea and the plan that we are on right now is to finish the environmental strategy and start right away with the climate action plan and the updating of the community energy plan. That will be late fall, yes. And we will start with first doing a full scan of what we can do, what are the low-hanging fruits that we have to start with, and of course it's going to include some actions that the community can take. And the idea of having this action plan updated, the climate action plan and the community energy plan updated, is to be able to access funding for retrofitting. There are some grants available at the federal and provincial level that requires to have a community energy plan or a climate action plan. And so what it means for her is that at some point next year, we are going to start having these programs for residents that they will be able to access because we have that plan in place. Any other question?
Thank you. Any other questions? I have a few. Sorry. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the presentation, and I certainly appreciate the sentiment. This is, I think, having a climate declaration recognizes that there's a problem. It's an admission, and I think it's a statement that we as a municipality have a role to play. I think there's a lot we can do as a municipality and as individual citizens, and I appreciate the other presenters' recognition that we have a history of being green in East Gwillimbury, and we're proud of that. And I think we want that to continue. Certainly, there is overwhelming scientific consensus that this is an issue. I think the only thing that scientists perhaps agree more on is the theory of gravity. I mean, there is overwhelming scientific support that we do something on this. So when you look at, the rising temperatures of the earth, water levels rising, extreme weather events, you look at we just have to look as far as last week to see the unseasonably warm weather that we had. Something's going on with the planet, and we have to do something about it. In my own past in the insurance industry, we've recognized this for a while. Fire was no longer the greatest threat that we had as insurers. It became overland flood, and that's because of the changing weather pattern. And in my own personal family, we have a Christmas tree farm in Mount Albert. We're probably the last Christmas tree farm, cut your own, in East Gwillimbury. My father started in 1977 when you could plant 1,000 trees in a field and you could leave them knowing that the rain would come down and take care of them. Well, up till about 10 years ago, when we started planting trees, we would lose all of them, 1,000, 2,000. So you'd have to get irrigation systems, which can cost at a minimum $100,000. So the business model for this sort of thing no longer works in a climate change world. So we have to do something. So I don't know, Madam Chair, if you'll indulge me, but I think we can debate this, change the what's been presented. We could tweak it here and there and send it back to staff. But I think we need to get on with this today. I would really like to see council, their committee of the whole today, consider it. I'd love to see us vote on it and support it, and then I would take that one step further. I'd like to see us ratify it tonight at council. Let's get on with this. We have been, I think, Acting CAO Velchich mentioned it at the beginning of the session, that we've been talking about this for quite some time. Well, I think we have to move beyond talk and let's get into some action here. So that would be happy to move that. But if there's other members of council that have, or committee that have questions or comments, so be it. But I would like to, I think we need to get on with it. That's my 2 cents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and I agree. We have over 650 councils across Canada who've already made the declaration, including half of the other municipalities in York Region. And as we heard in the presentation, at one time we were leaders, and if we don't get moving on this soon, we will be in the back half of the pack rather than the front half of the pack. In our budget, there was support from council for the climate action plan and various other climate initiatives. The outreach that Ms. Ross did in the community was very well received. I heard so many positive comments about that. This is the third presentation that we've had as a council on this. And I think, at least the third, I think that you've spoken to us before, as well as EAC's been here twice. So I think to Councillor Crone's point, we need to get on with this. Nothing's going to change to make this better by waiting. We can, fiddle around with the whereases until the cows come home, but at the end of the day, temperatures are going up, the emergency's not going away. So I'd be happy to accept the motion that Councillor Crone's putting on the floor, both for receipt and do we have the exact wording that you wanted? I believe it's from the draft motion on pages 69 to 72 of the agenda. Madam Clerk, can you pull that up?
Through you, Madam Chair, perhaps since this motion was in a draft form, perhaps, Councillor Crone has presented the idea to receive the presentation and consider that draft motion. You can vote on that. And then following that, we can bring forward the whereas clauses for the committee's consideration today, if that's okay.
That sounds good.
So we can do it in two parts where we would receive the presentation, that the committee consider the draft climate emergency declaration, and then we'll bring that one.
Okay. So that's what's on the floor before us right now, is to receive the presentation and to consider the draft motion. And that's moved by Councillor Crone. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? I see none opposed. Thank you. So we'll now discuss the draft on page 69 to 72. If we can have that up before us. So there is quite a number of whereases. A lot of this has been discussed in the presentation. And as I said, changing the whereases doesn't change the meat of the motion, which is that we get moving on this. As a municipality, we have the power to do things with our own greenhouse gas emissions, but also, to Councillor Leahy's point, helping our residents know what they can do. So I think that this is really important to move forward with this as soon as possible. Does anyone have any comments on, everyone has seen this, it's been in their package? And if we could just scroll down to the meat of the resolution.
Just bear with me for a moment. I'm going to scroll down. I don't want to give anybody a headache. There it is.
And I'm assuming, Councillor Crone, you're placing this on the table? It's the mover. And I believe that we wanted this to be brought to council for ratification. So maybe we'll keep that separate. We'll vote on this first. And when this passes, we can then...
You could perhaps have that added to the last clause here, that,
Okay.
that this motion be ratified at the April 18th council meeting.
Thank you. Keep scrolling, yeah. I think council has seen this all in our agenda package. We'll just scroll to the end for anyone who's watching. So they can pause and read it if they need to. Okay, so there we have that before us with the added motion that it be brought to council for ratification today. Moved by Councillor Crone. Any discussion from council? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. Go ahead.
May I just suggest the last clause that the declaration be considered at the, or be brought forward to?
Yeah.
Thank you. Whatever the best wording is there, but rather than it be ratified, we're anticipating something that may or may not happen.
Good point. Councillor Johns?
Yeah, I would just like to go on record. I think that you mentioned about passing the torch on a generation, and I think to myself the things that we experienced growing up. I remember the hole in the ozone layer, and we came together and we worked on that. And I think about being taught about acid rain when I was in school, and the government of the time said coal needs to stop, burning coal for energy needs to stop, and we fixed that. And you think about we would go visit my grandmother in the city, and then when we were driving down, coming off the moraine coming down from Woodbine, because the 404 wasn't there at the time, but you looked at the city and you could see the smog sitting over top of the city. And so smog days, and I remember thinking like, wow, why is that happening? And then I don't think folks reflect on it now, but at the time, it's not like we are having the amount of smog days that we had even when we were growing up as in younger days. And I think that, you know, we can consider and we can look to ratify, like, us not doing something is completely unacceptable. Like, here we are, we can have whereases all day long. We need to declare a climate emergency, full stop, done. I think sometimes if we take a step back too and we're looking at this from the matter as a corporation of the town versus we're a municipal government and we should be making statements as a government, but from the corporation side and running a business, you look at businesses that recognize that that standing in front of this type of challenge is good for the bottom line. It drives profit when you say, how can we do better? So I don't think that that's going to be any different from us on the corporation of the town of East Gwillimbury side. If we stand in front of this and we say there's a climate emergency, dominoes will fall and say, how can we be better? But I think that it's not just better for all of the reasons that you clearly communicated. It's also better just simply for a bottom line and infrastructure I am open to debate at council, but if there's going to be a heavy debate, then I'll come prepared. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I just wanted to thank you for the positive, we can fix this, because I think sometimes when we start talking about climate change, it's very depressing. And I think especially for our youth, we need to have that positive message out there that we are doing something and we can do something, and what we've done in the past has made a difference. So now we need to step it up to the next level, and we're prepared to do that. So I'll go to Councillor Roy-DiClemente next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment. I don't anticipate there will be a big debate, Councillor Johns, so you can stand down. I think we're okay. What I wanted to comment on was simply that in the past, I think one of the prior times this was before us, I made some comments about making sure that if we were to declare this, that it had to be meaningful, and that there had to be something behind it. It wasn't enough to just say, oh, we're declaring an emergency, and then we can tick that box and move forward. And I think for me, the work that's gone into this declaration, the draft that's before us, specifically references specific actions and things that we're going to do, the climate action plan, the community energy plan. And so it's not enough to just declare the emergency, but to put action behind it. And for me, I think it's meaningful because it contains those specific calls for staff to do something, and for us as community leaders, and for our residents, as Councillor Leahy commented. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And I want to thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Ross, for the tremendous amount of time you've put into this, making it very easy for us and for our residents to understand. I really appreciate it. And a huge thank you to our Environmental Advisory Committee, who first brought this up about 3 years ago. Thank you for being here today to see this move forward. So now it will go to council this afternoon, or this evening, I guess. So thank you very much, and we'll move on to, Mr. Velchik, do you have anything to add to that before we move on to the next one?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so our second and last item in corporate services is the outstanding council items list, something that council's been waiting for, and we're so happy to see it finally on the agenda. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Velchik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just make a couple of brief comments. I really wish to express appreciation to our clerk's office, in particular the deputy clerk that's taken this on and sort of coordinated pulling this together. So thank you very much. And we do acknowledge that we used to have a list a number of years ago. Some might remember something we referred to as the pending list. It was a piece of paper that people carried around, and it had 5 or 10 items on it, some of them dating back many years, I might add. But in any event, this is a new and improved version, and we do know that there may be an item or two that we have to add to the list. If you notice anything that you think might be missing, please just contact the clerk's office. We're happy to review it, and we'll be bringing this forward to you at least a couple of times a year to make sure that we're keeping on track with all the commitments that that council is looking for. So certainly the deputy clerk is happy to take any detailed questions if you have any, or staff in relation to the items that are on the list that are designated as responsible leads.
Thank you. A quick comment on this. As I said, I'm very happy to see this. This is very helpful to councillors who weren't here in 2018. And that's kind of where the push came from, is that EAC spent a lot of time on the tree protection bylaw resolution only to find out that it had already been passed by the previous council. So this helps with some history for those who weren't here for some of these motions. It also is a good way for us to make sure that we're on track with some of these things and looking at when they're coming forward. There's a lot coming forward in Q3, so we don't want to be giving staff too much more work for Q3. Is there any questions from members of committee? I'm not, oh, there you go.
Thank you. I just want to say congratulations and thank you and kind of echo that. Like, I love this. I think I recognize that there has been a version of this that is operating on the management side, and that's what you've been operating through. But I think that for transparency and reporting back to us on that regular schedule so that we can see, great business management, great for us as directors to be able to help support your success by giving that transparency to us. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you. I also want to add that rather than just coming to council a couple times a year, it would be helpful if it was emailed to us informally, so we can see and track what's on there, and then come to council for discussion in a more formal way at twice a year, 4 times a year, whatever. But whenever it is updated, if it can come back to council just through informal email, so we can make sure anything that's top of mind is on that list, or if there's things that aren't on that list, having a discussion with staff why they're not on the list. Do we need a resolution? I think it's going to help with the flow. I see the backyard chickens and backyard hens are both on there, so maybe that's a little bit of duplication that we can avoid in the future if we're seeing this more regularly. If there is no other comments, this is just here for receipt. Have someone move receipt. Councillor Leahy. All in favor? And that's carried. Is there any other questions from members of the committee under corporate services? Seeing none, Mr. Velchik, anything, any other comments for members of the committee?
Nothing further. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, then I will hand it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, and I will pass it along to Acting CAO Velchik for introductory remarks regarding that is in front of us now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm going to turn things over to our Acting Director of Human Resources, Meeta Gandhi. Just while she's making her way to the podium, just a couple of background comments. As you may be aware, Ms. Gandhi has been in this acting role for the last several weeks, and in that time has met with staff, as her HR staff, as well as with the some of the other staff, just to kind of do what we would call a little bit of a current state analysis and look at sort of some of the things that we need to do moving forward to get to what we refer to as desired future state. And so the presentation today hopefully indicates to you some of the things that Meeta has sort of got in her vision for where we are and where she sees us going. I'll turn it over to Ms. Gandhi at this point.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of Council. I'm pleased to be here today to present the Employee Engagement or Experience Strategy, rather, EGU Belong. Before I start, I want to acknowledge and recognize that this work is a culmination of collaboration amongst all staff, departments, extended and senior management team members. I also want to acknowledge the contributions of the Human Resources team, Liz Norwood, Erin Smythe, and Chris McPherson, and the Communications team, Laura Hanna, Danielle Vernay, and Rachel Thompson. Also, before I begin the presentation, I think it's important for Council to have the latest information about our staff complement. So I'll start with that. In the 2023 budget, we reported 177 full-time positions, including library staff. 8 new full-time positions were approved through the budget process, which brings us to 185 full-time employees. And we typically have about 140 part-time seasonal staff, plus paid on-call firefighters, and we currently have 66 paid on-call firefighters. So just some context about the people who work here and the number of employees that we have. Thank you. Like every initiative the town undertakes, it's important to connect the employee experience strategy with the strategic plan. This slide incorporates information from the emerging strategic plan that's available on our town's website. And specifically, the strategy links directly with the culture of municipal excellence strategic priority, which speaks of building an engaged and strategically aligned staff team to deliver high-quality programs. And those deliverables include service delivery excellence supported by a well-trained, highly engaged staff team, and updated policy to support continued good governance, embedded and also to embed the EDI framework into all town programs and services. It's also important to note that sustainability component of the strategic plan links to what we're doing here, and specifically social sustainability, and it's linked to inclusion and belonging. So the path to this presentation has been approximately a year. Next slide, please. Last summer, an HR review was conducted, and I'll speak about the results of that review shortly. And in the fall, we conducted an employee survey. Results of that survey were shared with Council in March, and I'll provide some of those highlights as well. Over the past 4 months, we further examined the results of the survey through focus groups and staff and people leaders, and through a workshop with the extended management team. Over the past few months, the Human Resources and the Communications team have been drafting the employee experience strategy, which I'm presenting today. I'll first provide a summary of the Human Resources review, which was conducted last summer. So that's next slide. Thank you. You could proceed to the next slide. Thank you. So over July and August of 2022, the consultants who were hired to conduct the review, they met with the CAO and Deputy CAO, 5 members of Council, all of the HR staff, and they also met with departmental teams. The objectives of the review were to assess areas of strength, to undertake a comparison of HR structures in other municipalities, identify opportunities to optimize and improve services, and also identify current trends. So next slide, please. That covers what I just mentioned. And next slide. Thank you. So there was some positive feedback that came from that result, namely the fact that we have some strength in our HR team with our senior HR coordinators, and there is value in having a health and safety and wellness coordinator on the team as well. Next slide, please. It also reflected the feedback council provided, including the need for increased understanding of human resource metrics and how we can better demonstrate that we are an employer of choice. So things like how many staff do we have, what's the volume of recruitment, what's our turnover rate, all those types of things a council identified as being certainly important. The next slide. So these are the themes challenges rather, that the HR review identified, and it included the need for improved recruitment processes from posting a job to onboarding, updated and new policies, the need for performance planning, better employee engagement with intersex with equity, diversity, and inclusion, and improved records keeping for training. So you'll see these themes come up as I talk about the employee experience strategy. So I'll now turn to the survey. So at the March 7th Committee of the Whole meeting, Rick Domenico, he shared the results of the employee survey, which was conducted in the fall. And just the next slide speaks to the exact same numbers that were presented. They're really tiny on the screen, unfortunately, but they're in your package, and the numbers are there, and they're the same as, obviously, that were presented in March. After the survey was conducted, we had focus groups. So we met with individual department staff members and then the people leaders of those departments. And we had separate meetings to talk to them about what they felt were priority areas for us to focus on. And so this slide, the next slide, thank you, speaks to the areas where there was interest interest expressed from staff and from people leaders, and where we should be focusing our efforts in the foreseeable future. And this was very important information because it helped us to identify some priority areas to work on and what should really the employee experience strategy focus on going forward. So benefits and compensation were certainly an area, performance management, training, modernization, and physical and mental work environment were among the top. That doesn't mean that the other areas are not included in the employee strategy, but you'll see towards the end I'll talk about some specific areas that we're going to focus on and the work that's happening immediately, and that's where some of the work is going to happen immediately. I will be speaking about all of the other elements though as well. So next slide, please. Before I describe the strategy, I want to say a few words about the role of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So in December 2021, Council adopted the EDI framework, which has 3 pillars: engage, educate, and express. I love the fact that people readily use those phrases now. It makes me happy. And while the employee experience strategy covers several themes, EDI is actually not identified as a specific theme because it is embedded in all of the themes. It is something that needs to be part of the entire strategy, and that is the same for modernization and for policy development. So there's, for every theme that you're going to see, there is an element of modernization, policy, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so I'll just move to the next slide, which is the strategy itself. So this is a model of the strategy. You'll see the supporting pillars that I just described, which are modernization, policy, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. And the themes that we have in the employee experience strategy are your experience, your career, Team EG, and our commitment. And so I'm going to describe what each one of those means and the work that's going to come out of those areas in shortly. I also want to point out to the title of the strategy. Next slide, please. So we're naming the strategy EG You Belong. And every single time I've talked about this, and either with staff, the staff town hall, or with the extended management team, or just individuals, the theme EG You Belong really seems to resonate with people, because I don't know a single individual who doesn't connect with that need to belong, to feel like they're part of something, to feel that they are part of an organization. And ultimately, that's the goal of this strategy. We want people to feel like they're engaged, they're part of a larger entity. And as the slide will indicate, belonging is when an employee feels seen for their unique contributions, where they are connected to their coworkers, where they're supported in their daily work and career development, and where they're proud of their work and the organization in which they work. And increasingly, I'm seeing more and more literature, I'm seeing more and more book titles, I'm seeing more and more work talking specifically about belonging, and in fact, not even talking specifically about equity, diversity, and inclusion, and they're focusing on what is the goal, and the goal is ultimately for belonging. So I'm going to move to the themes of the strategy, which I've already highlighted. And in these slides, the focus here is the theme itself, and then really how modernization and policy work is going to be incorporated. I'm not going to read all the words in the slides. I'm going to provide sort of an overview, and in a few minutes, I'm actually going to talk about what some of those action items look like. So the next few slides highlight each theme and provides the examples of the modernization work that's required. And so I'll start with your experience. So your experience is all about the ways in which a staff member is cared for. It's about providing supports for mental health, compensation, and overall wellness. We put your experience at the beginning of this list intentionally. We want to make sure that people are well when they come to work, that they are coming with their whole selves, that they feel like they can be their authentic selves in the workplace, well, in their lives, obviously, but and what can we do to support that effort? So what are we doing in terms of providing mental health supports? What do we have in terms of ADP and the supports that ADP is our automatic sort of our payroll system, and there's a lot more we can be doing with that. And then policy work. We have to create a multi-year accessibility plan, and that is required legislatively by the end of this year. We have to create policy that speaks to workplace and alternate work arrangements and those types of things. We really need to update the policy work that we have in our place of work so that people feel that they're supported to the greatest extent possible. The next theme is your career. So recognizing that people are coming to work with their whole authentic selves and they're feeling supported in their wellness, we also then want to focus on your career. So what are we doing to support staff through your career development from beginning of hiring process through the onboarding and further development? So from the moment somebody looks at a job posting, what is the messaging we're providing? What does it look like? How are people feeling like they're connected to East Gwillimbury right through the interview process and through the onboarding? How much of that can we automate and make sure that everybody in the organization knows we have a new person here, and making sure that the messaging around the fact that we have a new employee is well known, and so that people feel that they have a place to work. And also then once they're here, what does their growth look like? And that should be happening earlier in the career with EG, with their hiring a manager, with their supervisor, with other specialists in the area of helping employees figure out where it is that they need to go to develop their career to the greatest extent possible. Next slide, please. So having taken care of the individual self and thought about the employees and their career paths, the other element is Team EG. So that's really about how we're working together and how parts of the organization work together. It includes leadership training opportunities for people leaders and applying an equity diversity lens to reflect diversity of thought and perspective. So really, what are we doing and how are we shaping ourselves as an organization, avoiding silos to the greatest extent possible, making sure people are all speaking to each other with the same types of language, and that there's respect regardless of the department individuals work in, and that's shared across the organization. And then the next pillar is our commitment, which is communications, rewards, and recognition. And this is about making sure staff feel included and that information is shared in a timely way, that there's opportunities for dialogue, so there's two-way conversation, and then we pause and recognize things like years of service and performance excellence. So that's something that I know through COVID there was a pause in service awards and events for years of service. That's something we want to obviously re-engage with and make sure people are recognized for their time and commitment to East Gwillimbury. So the next slide is a bit of a phased approach. So I've talked about the themes, I've talked about where we want to go with this employee experience strategy, e.g. you belong. The next is a little bit about the so what does this mean and what are the actual items that are going to happen. So I'll just talk a little bit about the phasing and the timing of those phases. So this phased approach is planned with phase 1 essentially underway now. And that we expect each phase to last approximately a year to a year and a half, but that they're not necessarily sequential. They can overlap over time, and the phase and that overlapping might happen depending on resource availability and our ability to get through this fairly ambitious list of tasks, but we're excited to move in that direction. So the priorities identified in phase 1 were determined because they were perceived to be of high importance. If you recall the chart that showed the areas where both staff and people leaders felt were important. And there's also the items in phase 1 are because there might be, or there is, a legislative requirement. And so those are the things that we have to get to this year, and we will be working towards phase 2 and 3 afterwards. So in this phase, we're looking to rename also human resources to the people and culture branch. And that's similar to industry standards and aligned with a name that York Region has similar for their human resources area. I think it's people, culture, and equity, I believe. But it's something that aligns better with the strategy, e.g. you belong. So in this phase, we will or will already undertaking a part-time salary review. We're going to begin a full HR policy review. We want to develop an onboarding program, roll out our mental health awareness training, finalize a multi-year accessibility plan, explore maternity parental leave benefit top-up, and reinstate years of service awards. So that is what we're expecting to do in the first year of this plan. So that would take us to about this time next year. In phase 2, and again, as I mentioned, these are not necessarily sequential. They can be concurrent in some ways. In phase 2, we will undertake a full-time salary review. We will continue with the policy review. We're going to transition to a new N6 training system. So right now there's a request for information out through the N6 Human Resources departments for external training providers to essentially facilitate training for all N6 municipalities. And so by next year, that should be in place, and we'll be able to facilitate that and add that as a part of our training plan. We want to begin a leadership development program in-house and perhaps connect it with the N6 training system, depending on what is available there. Take a deeper dive at our benefits package review, and that actually should be happening annually to see what benefits are available and what do we need to adjust, what is actually being used, and where is there room for changes. Develop a rewards and recognition program. So in phase 1, we'll focus on years of service awards, but there's an opportunity to talk about other types of rewards and recognition programs through the municipality. We want to develop an employee communication strategy. Part of that has to do with the modernization work that we're doing throughout all of this, and what types of platforms are we using. Currently, we use SharePoint, we have a learning management system, we have ADP. There's a whole need for that modernization piece, which is part of phase 1. I don't think I mentioned it, but it is on that list. And then implement some of the HR modernization. Right now in phase 1, we need to do the needs analysis, figure out what systems we have, what are we missing, and what gaps do we need to fill. In phase 3, we would implement a succession planning framework. Let's sort of focus on all of the other pieces first, and then we can move into succession planning. Continue the policy review. We'll by then have set sort of a timeline for when and how often the policies are reviewed, and I'm hoping that that's automated so it comes up naturally. We'll continue our HR modernization, and we will conduct another employee survey. So what I also wanted to note was that as we roll out any of these initiatives, there will be communication that speaks to which element of which theme that activity or initiative is linked to. So when we do the survey in a couple of years, people will be able to very clearly say, these are the results of the survey from 2022, and this is what the town did in support of the results of the survey from 2022. So that is the conclusion of my presentation. If anybody has any questions.
Councillor LaHaye, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. My question is with regard to succession planning. I think, in my own opinion, I would like to share the urgency, which I feel that you have it in phase 3. I would suggest that you reconsider that and implement it in phase 1. Waiting 3 years to start talking about succession, I think, is a missed opportunity. Right now, there's the opportunity to build depth into departments, to have discussions with general managers, so that for whatever reason someone might retire or move on, that we have plans in place sooner rather than later, and being well prepared for changes, because as we all know, there are always changes in life, and we have to be prepared to deal with them. So I would suggest more conversation around where succession planning fits into these phases, and I would suggest sooner rather than later. And part of that, I'll just ask one specific question, is when someone does leave the town of East Gwillimbury, is there an exit interview that's conducted? If so, how is that feedback incorporated into the current staffing in order to make improvements? And if not, when would you be implementing exit interviews with staff?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So a couple of things. When I say it's a formal succession planning program, that's I worked on a formal succession planning program when I was working in Richmond Hill, and it's very, very comprehensive, sort of very formal program. But I have to say that we meet with departments on a regular basis, and we have conversations with all of the departments in terms of what is your future planning for staffing, and what are your plans in terms of short or medium term absences. So, we have a number of people away or about to be away on maternity leave, for example, and we talk about what are the strategies we're going to use to backfill those positions? Are there developmental opportunities? That all feeds into succession planning. So when I speak about actually putting in a formal system, it really is a formal system. We're constantly looking at where are there gaps, where do we anticipate people are leaving, and those conversations are happening with general managers and management teams on a regular basis. So that is 100% for sure. And the exit interviews, yes, those do happen as individuals are indicating that they'd like to leave the organization. It's voluntary, so we offer the opportunity for individuals to have an exit interview, and then we keep those records in human resources. And if there is anything that needs to be raised in terms of issues or accommodations or any, future planning, if they, for example, say that, there was too much work associated with this one particular job, then that's information that is shared. Any personal or confidential information that the individual does not want shared, then we, of course, respect that. But we do share information with the hiring manager, and so it helps to plan for individuals who are going into the role. And before we actually post that role, we make sure that we have looked to see that the role is, the job and the job duties are appropriate and reasonable. So if, for example, workload was an issue, then we would potentially adjust the job and the job description so that the next incumbent wouldn't have the same problems.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One, I just wanted to say thank you. This was refreshing reading and then listening to you present. I love having the plan. I love the title of You Belong, because I think it touches on a few different areas without being so direct. One of those areas, I think, is the recognition portion. I don't think that, in my past experience, I think it takes a lot for somebody to mark down on a survey that they are not getting recognized enough. like you really have to feel passed over to say that I feel like I'm not being recognized. And this is, in this area, on ours, it has held steady at a lower number. And I think that the You Belong program, based on what you've presented here, and honestly from the staff area top threes, by the way, it was interesting that the recognition wasn't there as well, but it still showed up in the survey. I think that you are going to tackle that. And I think, you know, we're coming out of COVID, and you talked about the recognition again, awards coming back up. But I would encourage and support you to see what expansion of what recognition looks like. And it doesn't even need to be in a formal sense. Like Mr. Marshall would not raise his hand and tick a box and say, I'm not being recognized for helping to deliver the lowest taxes in York Region. But Mr. Marshall is sitting there, and he is doing that and grinding that out with his team every year, month after month, year after year, delivering that. Should Mr. Marshall be recognized for that? No, Mr. Marshall would say no, but I think we can all be very proud of what Mr. Marshall is doing for us. So I don't know what that looks like, but I think that it's creating that environment in which we are supporting each other and celebrating each other's successes. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you.
Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Great presentation. So much information, a lot to digest here. I love the phased-in plan. I see nods down the table when people are talking about moving the succession planning framework forward, and I would guess, knowing you, that if you could do all of this tomorrow, you would do all of it tomorrow. So I appreciate the discipline it takes to figure out what has to get done first and what things can wait. And I will defer to your expertise in this area to know what can wait. But I have a question that I've raised before. Are we growing our staff fast enough? That if you had more staff, could we be implementing these things? And we're hearing from council that we want the succession planning brought up. Do we need to have more staff both in your department and in other departments? And I'm wondering if it's time for a more comprehensive review of how fast our town is growing, how fast our tax base is growing versus how fast our staff complement is growing. Because I know there's a number of areas where I'm afraid to ask staff for anything because I know how busy they are. And I would love to see a more fulsome review so we can bring our staffing levels up so that everyone is comfortable, council's getting what they need, and I'm not saying that we're not, because staff are bending over backwards to give us what we want, but I know staff are very, very overworked, and I would just like to see the numbers on how fast we're growing versus how fast our staff are growing.
So through you, Madam Mayor, you raised some very good points. First of all, yes, the phased-in approach is based on what we currently have in terms of capacity. We are bringing in an HR associate on a one-year contract, and I will be putting up my hand for that person to be converted to full-time. Full disclosure. So that is planned. And in terms of the other matter, in terms of growth, there was a meeting among staff very recently talking about growth management, and we talked about sort of infrastructure and our roads and networks, and then that quickly morphed into, well, who do we have in place to deliver on the growth part of our organization? And so it was agreed that we would be looking at creating a separate workshop specifically on staff utilization and the growth of the organization from a staff complement perspective and what is needed. When the HR review was conducted last year, there was a review of comparator municipalities. EG was the smallest HR department of all of the municipalities that we were compared to, and like-sized municipalities. And I don't have the exact name of the municipalities that we use right now, but it was the smallest. And so we have 3 full-time people and myself. If any one of those 3 people were to leave tomorrow, we would be in trouble. So it would be a detriment. It would slow down hiring processes. It would slow down the delivery of the strategy, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yes, we absolutely need more people. But the analysis piece we have not done yet, and we will be coming to council with that information.
Good. I look forward to seeing that because I think there's areas like communication and clerks. It's not just the municipality growing, but as council grows, it's more work, when we move towards system, more work for clerks. It's more work for communications as each of us have our demands. So I think that that's something that we need to consider as well as just the growth of the population, the workload that a larger council makes for staff. So I appreciate that and look forward to seeing a presentation on that.
And if we're speaking about wellness, if I might just add, workload and work-life balance is a big part of that. So, the communications team, I said this last year when we were doing the park openings, what two communication staff and myself as the acting director accomplished. I had a staff of 12 in Richmond Hill, and they did the exact same work of a team of 12. So, it is pretty substantial. In terms of what happens in communications, and hats off to the team. But is it sustainable? No, it can't stay that way forever. So,
And we need to retain those people. We don't want them going somewhere else where they'll get an easier workload. Thank you.
Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did want to echo Councillor Leahy's comments about the succession planning piece of it, and I had characterized it more along the lines of building leadership capacity amongst our team. We have some really great people at the GM level, and I want us to find those people in our organization who are in a position to take on more time in front of the podium here and really grow as individuals and grow their careers. For me, I flagged the performance management piece. Staff noted that as part of your survey areas of focus as number 2. That performance management piece, I don't really see it reflected here in your strategy, and I feel like that's something that's really leadership thought it was important, staff think it's important, and I'd like to see something a little bit more concrete in the strategy about that. And that also goes into the succession planning and the building of leadership capacity, because through that performance management you get those results. And so I'd like to see something further from that. It's not really clear to me how the performance management piece that was so important is going to be delivered as part of the strategy.
So through you, Madam Mayor, so in fact, that maybe it didn't make it on there because we're very aggressively moving forward on that, in fact. So we're actually using ADP to automate our career development process, and that is, quite frankly, my number one priority. That's the first thing that's going to be launched out of here. So apologies for it not making it onto the slideshow. It's just, it's more advanced than some of this other work is. So we've been working to create new forums and an onboarding process. In my view, onboarding, but a career development process. But in my view, what is paramount to that is coaching people, leaders, on how to have those conversations. And so we're sourcing a consultant to come in and to teach people about having those conversations or coach people. Some people may have lots of experience, some people may have had some less, but I want to sort of set some method of making sure that there's consistent and equal training amongst all of the people, leaders in the organization, and also staff for what to expect in a career development interview or meeting, and what they can to talk about. Anecdotally, my daughter just is preparing for her first career development meeting with her manager, and she said, well, what do I do? And it occurred to me that staff also need to get the coaching and the training on how to prepare for career development review discussions. So yes, that is absolutely a priority, and in the final document, we'll make sure that that wording is added. This is a presentation that is still noted as draft policy or draft employee experience strategy. There'll be a much fancier, more beautiful, with the help of our communications colleagues, document that is rolled out in May after we've had the feedback from council and shared the draft report with everyone.
Sorry, Councillor Crone, didn't see your hand there. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Roy-DiClemente beat me to the punch on performance management, so I'll try and salvage my question with that. I find performance management the whole issue can be very insightful as to the parts of the culture of the organization, positive and negative. I was just wondering if you could share with us any more insights that you had from your focus groups on what you learned from where staff was going with this.
There's a couple of things. One is that there is not a lot of consistency in terms of the timing of the reviews, and so I'm looking to automate that so people leaders know that it's time to do the performance reviews and that salary increments when they're needed are provided. Right now the forms are fairly broad. There's a section on what did you accomplish and what do you want to do in the future, and sometimes that's a good idea in terms of just having some broad areas, but it doesn't have things like core competencies that we actually do need to talk about. What communications, for example, is core competencies that we would want to make sure we're measuring across the entire organization so that everybody has some element of the core competencies. And then the other issue is really how feedback is provided and the fact that there's inconsistency in terms of if you go to 3 different people leaders, they're going to give 3 different, it'll be 3 different experiences for the performance review discussions. And so we want to be able to level that out and provide some consistency in how the reviews are done. If some people first have the employees fill out some part of the form and then the people leader fills out, or vice versa, there's no consistency at all. And so we want to make sure we're streamlining that. And people were finding that it was an issue, that I don't know what to expect. I don't know when I'm going to have my performance review, and who's tracking also the things like training and development that are noted in the performance or the career development review documents to make sure they actually get done. So these are all elements that we're looking to track and to standardize, and then the training I'm hoping is going to streamline that process. I know myself, I've received extensive training and how to deliver and develop performance review, have those conversations. And I can't imagine delivering or having performance review discussions having not had that training in my back pocket. So that's, to me, a critical piece of this. We need to invest in training so that everybody has that consistently. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that through you, Madam Mayor. Performance management is such, in my opinion, such a linchpin on how the corporate culture can go. And if the strong, healthy organizations, they have a good, formalized, rigorous, and well-structured performance review process, and everyone knows how it runs, and it's timely, and it's just part of the routine. Anyway, I think if you can get that right, I know you have your hands full with a lot of things right now, but that's a good one. Just one last question I wanted to ask you. You mentioned that you were talking about the next survey that would be in a couple of years. Do you think that frequency is short enough?
In this instance, I want to be able to show that we've done some good things before we do another survey. And so I think at least 2 years would be an appropriate timeline so that we had this survey, we've done the deeper dive, we've developed this strategy, we've delivered on the strategy, we've shown individuals in the organization that we're doing it. It takes time for culture to shift. And so I would suggest that a 2-year period, a 2 to 3 year period would be appropriate for the next survey.
Thank you for your answer. I am challenged, though. I wonder if you go 2 or 3 years, I think it's way too long. Because if there's underlying issues that you're not addressing, 3 years, you could have lost the staff member by then. So if it's funding and we're not budgeted properly, please put up your hand and let the council know. The organizations I've worked in, we've done them manually. So it's nice. It's part of that whole process. But anyway, I've said that before in front of this council, so I'll stop saying it today. At least for today. I'll continue to say it. Anyway, thank you, Madam Mayor. That's all for me.
Thank you. Councillor Leahy, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. My question is with regard to the suggestion that we do a lot of new hiring, because there are always tax implications for taxpayers when we hire new positions. I believe right now, in terms of my understanding of staffing, while acknowledging there could be gaps and that there's potential for burnout for certain positions that needs to be addressed, that we focus on quality rather than quantity always, because my impression is that the town of East Gwillimbury, the staff work very well together. They're very efficient, they're very effective, they're a well-oiled machine, they're getting a lot done. But I think one of the factors in their ability to get a lot done well is because they are a lean team, and so I think that has to be remembered. But my follow-up question is with regard, you mentioned at the top of your presentation, there were 8 new full-time positions approved in the budget, and so I'm wondering if you can just give us a very quick update on how those positions are being filled and where we're at with that process.
I'm going to have to get back to council on the exact status of all of those 8 processes. We have something in the vicinity of 30+ recruitment processes underway, and so I don't know specifically the answer to those questions. I know that the chief or the director of planning position, there's interviews this week, and there are, we're going to be posting the firefighter positions shortly in the next couple of weeks, I believe, so that we can do it in line with budget, but I'll have to get back to council with the specifics on each of those staffing. It's just difficult to, without having my crib sheets here, to be able to tell you the status of every single staffing process. So in fact, I had shown the extended management team a listing of all the staffing processes that are underway, and I think there was a bit of shock just to see the fact that there are 30+ processes underway, and that excludes things like summer camp counselors. So, you know, in addition to the group hirings that we have for park staff and for summer camp staff, we have upwards of 30 processes underway, and that it's a lot of work. And we have 2 HR people who are leading that volume. It's pretty substantial.
Thank you very much.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Thank you very much. Could I have a mover for the presentation, please? Councillor Crothers, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Just moving along here. Item J. And that's finance.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. In consultation with Mr. Marshall, there are no reports to deliver today, but I will defer to the committee if anybody has any questions. Yeah, Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Just wanted to recognize Mr. Marshall.
That is funny. I'll recognize Councillor Roy-DiClemente for the humor. Well done. Okay, back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I am looking at item K, Community Parks, Recreation and Culture, with Councillor Crone in the chair. I know that people have been sitting for quite some time. If you wanted to take a break, this might be the 5-minute break that you're looking for, or not. 5 minute, is that what I'm seeing? Sure. Okay, thank you. And it's 4:32, so 4:40, about 8 minutes, 10 minutes. I won't start without you.
Resume the committee session around 4:40, so the committee is recessing at this time. And with that, we are now live, and the first item on the agenda is item K under CPRC section.
Thank you very much. This is Community Parks, Recreation, Culture Facilities Branch Report CPRC 2023-07. And Councillor Crone is in the chair. There we go. And it's regarding the East Gwillimbury Soccer Club lease. Councillor Crone, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe we've decided to defer item number 1 about the East Gwillimbury Soccer Club. So I'll move on to the second item on the agenda. It's around the Joint Community Parks, Recreation, Culture, Corporate Services, Clerk Branch, and Legal Property Services Report around the Sharon Burial Ground. Could I have a mover for this? Moved by
Councillor
Leahy. Okay, and I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Carmison. What can you bring us up to speed on this? Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Representatives from the Sharon Burial Ground had requested a monetary contribution from the town for maintenance of their grounds, or of the grounds. Staff have reviewed the request and have provided through this report to council an option for council consideration, including turf maintenance at the property provided by our parks operations staff. Be happy to answer any questions related to the report.
Are there any questions for Mr. Carmison? Councillor Roy-DiClemente, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Carmison, just to clarify, so your recommendation, we have 2 here that we have to pick between. So as I understand it, or as I'm reading it, it's the burying ground in the past has spent $6,000 on a contract to maintain. But if we were to assume it, it would be an in-kind cost of $5,500. So it would cost us $5,500 to do it ourselves, correct? Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
So for me, I might see it as a $5,500 contribution, not a $6,000 contribution. I think that's really what we're going to be debating, is whether we would give them what it would cost us to do or whether we would just do the work ourselves. Does that make sense?
Mr. Carmison?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, that math sounds correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Roy-DiClemente.
Thank you. I can't remember if you had a mover for this, but I might make us a friendly amendment that we receive and that we approve a contribution of $5,500 to the Sharon Burying Ground for them to take care of their expenses on that. I don't know what my colleagues.
Councillor Leahy, that you were the mover to that. Are you okay with that?
Yes. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any? Is anyone on council? Would you rather see us just as the town staff just take care of it, as we do in some other instances in the community? That is correct, right, Mr. Carmison? That we do look after the grounds in some other dormant cemeteries. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we do provide grounds turf maintenance only to the inactive cemeteries that are listed in the report.
Councillor Carruthers, then Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'm not really sure what's on the floor right now, because I think at first both of them got put on the floor, and now we're looking at neither of them. We're looking at another one that's just giving them $5,500. I'm not even sure what's on the floor right now. So if you can clarify,
I thought that we were going with the staff
recommendation that it's in-kind services by the town and not to exceed $5,500. I thought that's what the intention was.
We have a friendly amendment. We have a friendly amendment on the floor to provide them $5,500 in cash. If you would, we're talking now. So any questions or comments? Madam Mayor, you had a question.
I'm sorry, I thought that we were looking at the 5,500 as the municipality working on this property, the same as we have for some of the other cemeteries that have no one to keep them clean and tidy.
Councillor Roy-DiClemente?
I perhaps may have inadvertently made some confusion when I thought that both resolutions were put onto the table with the motion, because there's an or in our agenda. So if the intent here is for us to provide the in-kind service, as it sounds like that's what members of council would like to do, I'm fine with that as well. Thank you.
Okay, so what's the pleasure of council here? Do we want to do this as an in-kind? I'm seeing some nodding heads. Madam Mayor, you're voting in favor of that?
I'm
or
voting in
stating
favor of that.
favor?
If we're doing that in other areas of our community, then I think we should be consistent and do the same in this case as well.
Okay, so might I suggest that Councillor Roy-DiClemente, you amend your friendly amendment once more to that we provide
Withdraw.
$5,500 worth of in-kind.
Mr. Chair, I've withdrawn my friendly amendment. I believe Councillor Leahy has the motion, and the intent of her motion was to provide the in-kind services that we receive and that we provide the in-kind services. I think that's what we're on right now.
Okay, are you good with that, Councillor Leahy?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. Are there any, Madam Clerk, do you have a question?
Councillor Cohen,
Comment?
if it helps, I'm just going to put the resolution up onto the screen so that everybody understands what they're voting on, and for sake of clarity, just bear with me for a moment. So the motion had two parts. There was an or, so I believe the intent of council is to approve this section that's highlighted in blue, which is to approve the provision of in-kind services by the town to the Sharon burying ground at an in-kind cost not to exceed $5,500 for turf maintenance.
Correct. Good. Unless there's any other questions, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion is approved. Thank you very much. Okay, we will move on to the second report. It's about the Playspace design and construction services for Oriole Nature Park. That's item number 3. Mr. Karmazin, what can you tell us about that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as per the procurement bylaw, this report recommends council award of a contract for a natural play structure at Oriole Nature Park. The play structure contract award will be included with the general contract for construction anticipated this spring and summer of 2023. Be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Council have any questions about this? I need a mover for this as well. Moved by Councillor Carruthers. Okay, no questions? Okay, then I will call the vote then. All in favor of this? Okay. Any opposed? See none, motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, and the last item on the list, number 4, Community Parks and Recreation Culture Report, Purchase Order Requisition Increase for Contract T-21-08, Tree Maintenance and Removals. It's a 3-year contract. Mr. Karmazin, please elaborate.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. As per the procurement bylaw, staff are requesting an increase to the purchase order for arborist work in town as a result of some significant increased arborist work that was unanticipated in 2022. The metrics are provided on our service requests and completed work in 22 as opposed to previous years. The increase in the purchase order value has been included with the council-approved operating budget. Be happy to answer any questions related to this report.
Are there any questions for this report? Okay. I will need a mover for this. Moved by Councillor Johns. Last chance for any questions. Will the council approve 45,000 increase to the total amount of purchase order requisition number 64 in the amount of $152,100, excluding taxes for tender? All in favor? Okay, none opposed. Motion is carried. Thank you. Do we have any, does committee have any questions for Mr. Karmazin? Mr. Johns, Councillor Johns?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Karmazin, I just wanted to follow up on I know there was the Sharon Temple request back during our budget times, and I just wanted to ask for an update as to where the request was with, I think it was design around the sculpture. I can't remember specifically. I'm just wondering about an update if you could.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the request was for design service, landscape architectural services, as well as an order of magnitude or an estimate on the extent of the construction. And we've reached out to the temple now that the snow's off the ground. We walked the site with representatives from the temple last week, and we brought with us our manager of parks, Frank Mazzata, our landscape architect, Stephanie Fraser, and our parks project manager, Justin Tucker, to review the work. And we're developing the design currently with the representatives from the temple. And once the design is complete, we'll be providing the cost estimate. So it's well underway.
Thank you very much.
Our perspective.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Karmazin? Mr. Karmazin, do you have anything else you'd like to share with the committee?
Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're at item L, Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services, with Councillor LaHaye in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The item on the agenda today is Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services Memo 2022 Annual Fill Program Site Alteration Update. Could I please have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Johns. The report is moved by Councillor Johns. And General Manager Molinari, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Yes, and thank you, Madam Chair. This is our annual update on our fill program. We continue to have 2 approved large fill commercial fill operations. First one's MAP, which is Man Albert Pit, which continues to operate in accordance with their fill management plan and is just over 40% complete. We also have the Rice Pit, which is on McCowan Road, and which has mostly completed their berm and site prep, but still completing their design for the Davis and McCowan Road intersection before they can complete the works to allow them to commence their operation at the pit, the filling of the pit. The town continues to process and monitor small site operations and manage illegal and non-compliant sites, and we found that activity levels have mostly returned to pre-pandemic levels. And finally, with ongoing changes to regulations by the MECP, the town is proposing to update its site alteration bylaw to incorporate best practices and ensure it's up to date. Going forward, we envision more frequent updates to the bylaw just to keep pace with this evolving industry. So in the interim, the site alteration permits have all been updated to incorporate those regulatory changes. So at this point, nothing's falling through the cracks, but we would like to get our administrative side of things in order, just to make sure that we've got all the boxes checked. And that's happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Molinari. Are there any questions from members of committee? Seeing none, if there are no further questions, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented? And the motion is carried. Are there any other questions from members of the committee under the Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services Department? General Manager Molinari, do you have any further updates for the committee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a couple quickly. So just wanted to bring to Council's attention that the mosquito control program is expected to start later this week. Conditions are now favorable. We could see helicopters running through the town as early as tomorrow. So that's coming up quick. Also, the street sweeping program has begun. We have 3 units that are operating town-wide, and this work will be followed by our annual line painting program to refresh all the pavement markings. And finally, I just wanted to advise council and the public that there will be a PIC for the draft TMP, Transportation Master Plan, and our Water Wastewater Master Plan on Wednesday, April 26th from 5 to 7 right here at the Civic Center. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will now pass the chair back to you, Mayor Hackson. Oh, sorry, I was a little premature there. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, do you have a question for General Manager Molinari?
Thank you. Yes, Madam Chair, through you. I think there's a long-standing request from council that when we're holding a public information center, that we don't hold it over the dinner hour. And this PIC for our master plans is from 5 till 7, and in the past, we've wanted to make sure that people who were commuting or who were coming back into town or who were trying to take care of kids or do evening activities had an opportunity to participate in these. I know attendance will likely be modest, but I just wanted us to make sure that we didn't lose track of that request. It's a rather long-standing one that's probably predates the pandemic, but it's something that's of importance to our residents if they want to be able to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roy-DiClemente. If I may make a comment, I think in this situation, because it's already been advertised and it's coming up so quickly, I might suggest, if General Manager Molinari agrees, that we might leave this one as is, but in the future, we make note when scheduling to take into that consideration of the dinner hour for residents.
Thank you. I've raised this before, and so I'm just staying true to message.
General Manager Molinari, would you like to respond?
Through you, Madam Chair. Certainly, we could look at extending this to 8 p.m., and that would give people sufficient time to come after dinner. But staff, for the most part, staff are here, and some people may find it convenient to come earlier, but maybe adding an extra hour provides that flexibility for everybody.
Thank you very much, General Manager Molinari. I think that's a wonderful compromise to accommodate everyone's schedules as far as possible. So thank you very much for that suggestion. And yes, Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you. Great to hear that the mosquito spraying is beginning. In Holland Landing, we really appreciate it. We had a report earlier that spoke about the supplementary mosquito control, and I'm just wondering where we're at with that. Is that coming back to council? I don't believe it was the monies were approved, but it was something that was going to come back. So wondering when we can expect that.
Through you, Madam Chair. So when we had a report that came to council when we awarded this current contract for the mosquito control program, and there was an option that we included in the tender to get pricing for that. So we have that pricing, and if council wishes us to bring that back for consideration, we can certainly do that at any time.
Okay, I would appreciate if that could come back to council. And one second question, if I may. You were talking about the line painting and that, and it has me thinking about the Rainbow Crosswalk and just wondering what's happening with that. I believe it's not going to be replaced in time for Pride, and I'd suggested maybe we reach out to the Rice Group about painting a crosswalk somewhere else so that we do have a crosswalk for Pride.
Through you, Madam Chair. So yes, we have talked to Rice about the permanent solution, and they are looking to proceed with that. Once we have, right now we have we will be having base asphalt in place by that time. The top asphalt will be placed later on this year. So anything that goes on that base asphalt is going to be covered up later this year. And even when we looked at the crosswalk on a temporary basis, the sidewalk on the far side, on the south side of the roadway, is not in any kind of shape to be able to handle pedestrian activity. So it really, to have a crosswalk in that location before we have permanent asphalt, top lift asphalt in place, really would provide very little benefit. We have had preliminary discussions about potentially using this at a different location, but it's somewhat complicated from the fact that, you know, Rice is providing us with the project at the Civic Center, and to do works outside of the Civic Center may be somewhat problematic. So we were hoping that we would just this year get some feedback from the diversity committee and get some feedback from that group in terms of what sort of things they might want to see to help support this year's event. And if there's some things that we can do to help along those lines, we felt that was probably the best way to proceed for this year, knowing that next year we would have, you know, the ultimate crossing in place for years to come.
When the motion was passed by council to put the crosswalk here, as part of that motion, it was that we would look at the two libraries for the next year. So we would have one crosswalk in each ward. So we're falling behind on that. And so what I had asked previously is if Rice can't provide the crosswalk back in place for the month of Pride, that they pay to put it someplace else so that it is in place for June. I know they're doing the works here, but when they first presented to us, the question was asked about that crosswalk, and they assured us it will be back by June. So if they are not living up to that end of the bargain, then I think it's incumbent on us to say, then pay for it to be somewhere else, because the diversity committee lobbied hard to get that crosswalk, and to have it there for 1 year and the next year it's just not there. Frankly, I think that's really disappointing. I mean, it was in the newspaper and everything else, and now it's just gone. I think that Rice promised that it would be there for June. If they can't put it there, then they should put it someplace else for the month of June. I do think we need to put pressure on them to do this. This is a huge project, and the cost of a Pride crosswalk means nothing to them and a lot to our community. So I would very much like for us to continue to pressure them to put it at one of our libraries.
Yes. If you'd like to respond, General Manager Mulner, please.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. We'll certainly have those discussions with Rice. I'm not saying that they've said no, but there are ongoing discussions with regards to getting the works done at the Civic Center, and this will be something that we'll just add on to that and see if we can get that in place.
Thank you. It's very important to the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? I just had one comment that it was noted that in the communications department, if we can make sure that we update the current advertising with regard to the timing, that we're adding an extra hour onto the public information session on the various platforms wherever that's being promoted, and that we will be mindful in the future of making the hours flexible in terms of timing. So that as many people as want to participate can participate. So now back to you, Madam Mayor Hackson. Thank you.
Thank you. We're at item M, and that's Emergency and Community Safety Services with Councillor Foster in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have nothing prepared on the agenda today, but I might take this moment before I turn it over to Chief Mackenzie. I failed to get your attention when we were doing the community announcement, so I'm going to jump in here where I can. Just wanted to remind everybody that Emergency and Community Safety Services have put together a bit of a hockey team. Chief Mackenzie mentioned this before. They're going to be taking on the East Gwillimbury Eagles. I think it was advertised as the under-18 team, which I would refer to as the juvenile team. I don't know if that's still the way they talk that group or not, but that's what it was. So that's this Sunday, the 23rd. At the sports complex, 1,500 hours on, so 3 o'clock on. Puck drops at 4. Cash donations in lieu of an entry fee, and non-perishable food items will be accepted. And this is supporting Special Hockey International. And we'll also have Abby Lunny there, who was in the chamber with us before, who's a gold medalist with the Canadian IIHF women's hockey team gold medalists in 2023. So we'd like to have some attendance. And hopefully Chief Mackenzie will be behind the bench, cracking the whip, keeping everybody skating. And anyways, with that, any updates, Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to update. I'm not allowed to coach. They told me I can work the door for the defenseman. So that will be my job for the day. But thank you. No, nothing else from ECSS.
Not even if we get you a fedora and a hockey jacket? You look the part. Any questions for the Chief from committee? Seeing none, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We are at Legal and Property Services with myself in the chair. I have nothing at this time unless Ms. Ingram does.
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, there's nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Ingram? Seeing none, I will move along then to the next item, and that would be other business. And I'm not seeing any on my agenda unless someone else has something that they would like to talk about at this point. I'm not seeing any, and with that, I will move to an adjournment at 5:11 p.m., moved by Councillor LaHaye. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Wonderful long day today. A lot of information. I often think when we have a day like this that we should have somehow taped it and saved that information, because there's a lot of jewels that we crossed today and a lot of items that sometimes people are thinking about it but never really have an opportunity to bring it forward. And so thank you to everyone for creative thinking today. And with that, we are concluded. Thank you.